Yes, it says you are live. So I'm gonna give y'all a minute to bring it in so I can have a minute to share this. But while I'm getting ready to share this, welcome to Sweet the Podcast, episode 29, the reparations, Black culture, the revolution, and fuck the police. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel about that. But I have not only my rhetoric to spit today, I have a guest to counteract my almost extremism, almost radicalism. But I have a great guest who's very knowledgeable in politics and all these things, way more than I am, to get into it. And it's none other than Ben Pusey. How's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having me, Will.
No problem. Can you please introduce yourself and who you are?
Right. My name is Ben Pusey. I was born and raised here in Orlando, Florida. I have worked in politics, in radio. I had a radio show for ESPN Radio for a couple of years on the weekend here locally. Worked 10 years in corporate America, got my master's degree in business and been working in taxes and community social justice work since then. A lot more taxes and business than community work in the last 10 years. But my experience from campaign work for Alan Grayson, who was elected to Congress here from Orlando, and working on a couple presidential campaigns, has always led to a complete and utter passion for politics. I study politics on my free time, like I'm getting paid for it. So
right. So you know about the things that are happening and how it's a very serious state and affair that we're in right now politically, in every aspect, health, protection, reform, in every aspect that we're dealing with right now regarding to the revolution. Now, we do have another guest who I do see is in the waiting room, returning guest to Sweet the Podcast. Henry, please pop up. So,
you can do it.
You can do it. You can do it. Oh, I see it. It'll come in later. It's what it is.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
I know. I can see him in the waiting room. But while he's coming through, we have to talk about Joe Biden and the black vote.
Are you sure we're allowed to? Because we might not be black if we talk about it.
Well, Trump says that, but
that was Biden.
Biden. It was Biden.
Yeah, that was Biden that said we ain't black if you think not voting for him.
Well, he also said another thing, that he opposes the call to defund the police.
The way that I think it was the New York Post or so framed that headline was Joe Biden breaks with Black Lives Matter and stands against defunding the police. And my immediate post on Facebook was, when exactly was this architect of mass incarceration with Black Lives Matter? When was he aligned with Black Lives Matter? Because I'm pretty sure Black Lives Matter has been founded and has continued to fight against the results of mass incarceration that Joe Biden on the Democratic side is probably one of the most responsible for of anyone that you can point to on the Democratic side.
Explain why.
Lobbied Ronald Reagan to amp up the drug war. Not Ronald Reagan pushing him. And there's videos of this. You can go online and watch the videos from 1989 of him talking about how Ronald Reagan isn't doing enough to hire more police and put more people in prison. Like, this is his ideology, and it has been all along.
And people don't know. I don't see how they don't know that he is the architect of the 1994 crime bill that is like the birth child of mass incarceration that we see today. And people,
because I think there's a real specific reason. Can I say a word about that?
Heck yes, go ahead.
Because it's nuanced, because it's complicated and it's complex, and people don't actually understand the complexity of how laws are passed in our country. And so they don't understand who's responsible versus who's just a bystander who may be voting for something they don't believe in, but they believe in other parts of the bill, versus the people who actually have the power to edit a bill. So Joe Biden in particular, when we talk about the 1994 crime bill, there are only a couple people in the entire country who have the ability to edit the 1994 crime bill, to decide what pieces of legislation would be in it and which pieces would not be. And there's a ton of great stuff in the 1994 crime bill. The Violence Against Women Act, a 10-year ban on assault rifles. There were all kinds of good things in the 1994 crime bill. But some of the things that were horrible in the 1994 crime bill was the 3 strikes you're outlaw. So you could get 3 nonviolent drug offenses and be locked away for life. Think about that. 3 marijuana charges, and you now have a life sentence where you could kill somebody and still get parole after 15 years. But if you got caught with weed or selling weed 3 times, you're done. And there's I think it's over 3,600 people nationwide who are locked up in federal prison with no chance of parole. They are locked up for life for nonviolent drug offenses. And so when we're talking about the ability to edit it, a bill goes first to committee, and Joe Biden was the head of the committee. So the head of the committee decides what gets put in the bill, what doesn't get in the bill, because it doesn't get passed on to the larger Senate body to vote on without it passing through committee. So the first person who has the ability to edit is Joe Biden. The second person who has the ability to decide whether it gets voted on in the entire Senate was Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader. And the third person who had the ability to decide whether it became law was Bill Clinton, who had a line item veto at the time. He could have just scratched through something if he wanted to scratch through it. And again, Democrats had control of the Senate and the White House. And I'm not sure if they had the House. I think they did, at least the first couple of years of Bill Clinton's presidency, and they might have lost it in the midterms. But Joe Biden, Harry Reid, and Bill Clinton are the only people who had the ability to say this part up, this part down. And so people say, hey, Bernie Sanders voted for the bill. Bernie Sanders was in Congress. He didn't have any ability to edit this bill. And had Bernie Sanders been in Joe Biden's position as the committee chair, there's no way that bill looks like that, because that bill was against a ton of things that Bernie Sanders believed in, and Bernie Sanders spoke about it at the time to say, we're passing a bill. I'm going to vote for it because it's got good things, but there's going to be some unintended consequences of this bill that are going to be bad. And in fact, as we fast forward 10 years, it had decimated Black communities. We got family members in jail. We got kids growing up without their fathers because of a bill that was terribly written. And even 10, 20 years later, they've done nothing to fix it. And that's where I really feel like we have to hold these people accountable, because you can't say it was a mistake. You can't say I didn't know what it was going to do, but then you're the vice president for 8 years and you don't do anything. You don't do diddly to fix it. At some point, it's not a mistake. At some point, it's what you wanted. It's what you said you wanted. It's what you've left in law for your entire time in power. And you've continued to be one of the most powerful people and influential people in Washington your entire career.
So I do have a guest. Henry, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you see me?
There we go.
Hear you and see you beautifully. I love it. I told you. It will all work out in the end. No, hey, technical difficulties happen. When you're doing this kind of shit, trust me, I get it. I understand how shit goes. And this is a question I wanted to pose to both of you, especially now, since we're on Joe Biden and the Black vote. Since now, especially since everyone is uprising over the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Tony McDade, I have to mention the trans lives as well in part of this. And now everybody is saying, okay, since you're out there protesting and rioting, you should get out there and vote, go and vote and do that. Now we have Trump as the obvious alternative, and then we have Biden. Some people say we should choose a lesser of two evils if you don't like it. How do you feel? I'm going to go with Henry since he is entering now. How do you feel about this whole just go out and vote? And do you feel it's even worth it?
Voting is a very triggering subject. Personally, I was really not planning to vote in the presidential election because it's just a situation of, it's not even lesser of two evils. They both are evil. Flat out, period. They both are rapists. They both have horrible politics. They both have horrible relationships with the Black community. So I don't feel like neither one of them is qualified for the job. Me personally, I was for Elizabeth Warren before all of this happened. But at the end of the day, I felt like Elizabeth would have done the job fairly, but because of misogyny, she didn't get as far as she needed to.
Okay.
That's the first part of it. The second part.
We're not here to read Elizabeth Warren today.
Because I was gonna say,
let that slide.
I wasn't going to read Elizabeth Warren.
We don't need to go in on her. She's just sitting on the sidelines, not bothering nobody right now.
Because I liked Elizabeth Warren now. I really, really did until she pulled that shit with Bernie Sanders, acting like he wasn't for women's rights and things. Oh, Henry.
Right.
You got to try to go in.
So you didn't have any problem when Harvard asked her if they could put that she was the first woman of color to graduate from Harvard Law, and she said yes.
Okay,
that problem with that.
That was a problem too. Okay, I forgot about that.
Like,
I forgot
a long history of you exaggerating things for political expedience, of you not being trustworthy, and then asking us on your word to believe that someone said a woman could never be a president when you got a history of lying and he doesn't. Like, I got a problem with that. I got a problem with you getting into politics because you were angry at Joe Biden for passing the bankruptcy and credit card bill that screwed over working class Americans because Joe Biden is corrupt and has taken money from banks his entire career on Wall Street. And that's what inspired Elizabeth Warren to get into politics, to run for Senate. And then when it comes down to her versus her ideological brother, Bernie Sanders, she can't figure out which one of these two men she needs to endorse.
Has she still not endorsed anybody, or she endorsed?
Endorsed Joe Biden at this point, just like she endorsed Hillary Clinton and didn't endorse Hillary Clinton, or didn't endorse Bernie versus Hillary, and wouldn't run against Hillary. Like, I got a problem if you enter into politics, it's either to gain power or to stand for the things that you believe in. And Elizabeth Warren has a long history of saying the things that she believes in, and they're actually the same things that I believe in. But when push comes to shove, and it's time for you to have that uncomfortable moment where you stand up against the power structures in the party and stand for the things you believe in, Elizabeth Warren has not shown up. And I don't say that because I love Bernie Sanders, because to be honest, I could give a damn about Bernie Sanders. I care about policy. And if Elizabeth Warren was going to be the person to carry the policies that are important to me to the White House, I'll vote for her without thinking twice about it, right? But I've been around politicians. I've worked for politicians. You either have believers or you have people that want to win elections. And I want to believe Elizabeth, but look at the difference between the courage that she didn't show in this primary versus after Bernie had a heart attack and AOC endorses him from a hospital bed. Because she wasn't going to let her policy agenda go down like that.
Any room for white people in your revolution? Oh, yes, it's plenty of white people in the revolution. It's plenty. I don't know who that was, but they've commented. Henry,
in our country, you'll probably be driving the bus through the revolution. We don't have much control over that. Oh, Henry,
I can't hear you. Go out and come back in with those headphones in, though. Go out and come back in with those headphones in. Then we can hear you.
Yeah, we took a shot at his girl. We got to give him a chance to.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm going to give him a chance to rebut this shit about Elizabeth.
I feel bad.
Because
I didn't come here to talk crap about Elizabeth Warren.
I know. But I seen your face as soon as he said. But listen, I forgot all about that shit about her claiming she was Native American or whatever, and 1%. But I like Bernie Sanders. He was my go-to guy for who we had to choose from. He was my go-to.
It's the broader picture that I think we need to start discussing as a community is that it can't be about personalities and it can't be about how people make us feel. I think that is the struggle of what we're up against right now, is that Donald Trump makes everyone feel terrible. Yeah. And because this terrible person, this mean, hateful, narcissistic man, who belittles everyone and he's in the highest position of power, he's a bully and everyone hates a bully, he triggers all of us. But there's a difference between the people he's offended and the people that he's injured. The people that he's injured are the migrants coming from Honduras who he ripped their kids out of their arms, sent them to an adoption agency in Iowa, and then deported the parents back to Honduras without their child and with no way to reconnect them. They had their kids kidnapped from them. Donald Trump's policies injured that family. If you were caught up in the Muslim ban when your family was trying to come in from the Middle East and they couldn't fly into America, even though they should have had every right to do so, your family has been injured by Donald Trump's policies. But when I ask most liberals who are out here going, blue no matter who. What has Donald Trump done policy-wise that has impacted you or your loved ones directly, that has injured you? You know how many times I get lectured by white people about the climate of racism in America? Like, I actually don't need you to tell me about the climate of racism in America. I got called the N-word for the first time at 3 by my grandfather, who was in the KKK, towards my black father. When somebody threw a brick through the window of our apartment when I was 6 years old and we called the police stood in front of my interracial parents and said, well, what did you expect? Like, I've been dealing with racism in America my entire life. It didn't start with Donald Trump. Just because you discovered it in the last 3 years, just because it's new to you and it's finally being foisted in your face for the first time, doesn't mean it's new to me or it's new to any of the rest of us. Black Lives Matter was founded under Barack Obama. It was founded under a Democratic president in response to laws that were passed by Democrats. Don't make this a partisan thing. This isn't a partisan thing. And so when we're out there protesting, we're not protesting Donald Trump, because Donald Trump didn't create this fire. This fire has been burning for 100 years. And you can't put the fire out by voting for the arsonist that actually did light the fire, or at least, at the very least, if we're going to say that Ronald Reagan started it with the drug war, he at least poured gasoline on it in 1994 with that crime bill.
Who are we talking about?
1 million black people are in prison because of that crime bill.
And who are we talking about?
That's
related?
Joe Biden. And so it's so mind-boggling to me. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of exactly what we're watching on the flip side. We're watching poor rural people in Alabama and West Virginia, coal miners, factory workers who have been laid off because their jobs have been shipped overseas. And they're voting for Donald Trump, saying he's going to be the guy to save us. But Donald Trump is a billionaire. He's a capitalist. He doesn't give a damn about any of his workers. He doesn't even pay the vendors that have done work for him. He doesn't care about you. And yet here you are lifting him up on a pedestal because Fox News is telling you that's your savior. And so the same way we see the con game that Donald Trump is running on rural white Americans, we don't see the con game that Joe Biden is running on us. It's the exact same thing in reverse. We're sitting here saying the country's on fire, it's inflamed and engulfed with racism. Let's go get the guy that amped up mass incarceration to solve the problem that we're protesting against, which is mass incarceration and overfunded police forces. It makes no sense. It's not the solution, not even a little bit.
So basically, what you're saying is it's a little problematic, because you're saying basically you're worried about Trump, but Joe Biden is really that guy who was fueling the things that we're protesting and fighting against right now, from I say early Reagan era to definitely Clinton era.
Right. And I gotta say this because it's really important to frame it, like the PSA announcement. I do not like Donald Trump. I can't stand Donald Trump. Someone actually asked me on my Facebook Messenger, somebody I've known for a long time, they said, well, you got to share with me why you support Donald Trump. And I almost burst in tears. Like, to think that somebody hears what I'm saying and thinks that what I'm saying is I support anything that Donald Trump stands for. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not Candace Owensing you guys here. I'm not criticizing Joe Biden from the right. I'm criticizing Joe Biden from the left. It is a completely different paradigm. And so what we have to understand about our politics is that the way it's set up, if you're a Democrat that gets elected, you have a lot more leeway to be able to pass conservative legislation, because the conservatives want it and the liberals are not going to stand up against you, their elected president, right? Same as we just saw Barack Obama couldn't pass anything to do any type of criminal justice reform his last 4 years in office because Mitch McConnell would block it, right? But once Donald Trump gets elected, Kim Kardashian goes to the White House, and because he wants to look cool, her and Van Jones talked Donald Trump into signing the First Step Act, which actually legislated out of prison people, nonviolent drug offenders, that Joe Biden had legislated into prison. Like, we got to understand, when we're marching out here, the real threat is not Donald Trump. And it's not because I'm saying Donald Trump is good. I'm just saying they're actual records. If you put aside how we feel emotionally about these two men, the nostalgia that Joe Biden makes us feel like Uncle Joe. He's Barack Obama's Robin to his Batman. And I feel comfortable. I feel safe. And again, maybe you shouldn't. That's a whole different conversation about Barack Obama's actual record versus how he made us feel too. But that's a different podcast for a different day.
Yes.
But Donald Trump makes us all feel terrible. And so we are blinded in our hatred. They call it Trump derangement syndrome. It is acting as though Donald Trump is Hitler and he's the worst president ever. And how many times have you heard people say he's the worst president ever? There is not an objective standard by which Donald Trump is a worse president than George Bush. There is not any standard that you could use to measure a president. Like, has Donald Trump lied us into 2 wars that are going to last 20-something years?
Nope.
Has Donald has Donald Trump let an American city drown? He definitely let Puerto Rico struggle. I will make the equivalency between how he handled Puerto Rico and how Bush handled Katrina. But you name the policy. Has Donald Trump employed a torture program? Like, we committed war crimes under George W. Bush. Like, we were terrible by every single measure. And in the end, the entire economy was collapsing. And we were about to have a run on banks that if we didn't hand $1 trillion of taxpayer money over to banks immediately, without reading the thing, you weren't going to be able to go to the ATM on Monday. That's how bad it was under George W. Bush. It was so bad that this racist country elected a black guy with a Muslim name because we were so desperate for change. Like, that's how bad George W. Bush was. We got a black president after that.
It was terrible. But, basically what you're saying is this system is unredeemable.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we are being manipulated by the media. What I'm saying is that we are watching professional wrestling. And what's happening to us and the way we feel about Donald Trump is exactly what Fox News and conservative media did to Barack Obama. You remember Barack Obama making that joke about, oh, thanks, Obama, my cookie broke, right? Because everything was Barack Obama's fault. That is exactly what conservative media did. They had to demonize Barack Obama. There are fair criticisms to have of Barack Obama's presidency and where he didn't live up to his promises, which is like almost all of the promises he made during his campaign that I worked on. He didn't live up to them. He was going to end the war in Iraq. We're still there. He was going to give us universal health care, not a Republican Mitt Romney care from Massachusetts when Mitt Romney was governor of Massachusetts. He was going to raise taxes on people over $250,000 a year. Remember Joe the plumber? He instead made Bush tax cuts permanent forever. So there's real criticisms to be had of Barack Obama. But what we're not going to do is say that him and Hillary Clinton are running a child sex ring out of a pizza parlor in New York. We don't have to demonize these people. And the same as the right demonized Barack Obama to the point that everyone felt he was a Muslim terrorist that was born in Kenya, which is not who Barack Obama is. They're doing the exact same thing to Donald Trump.
But it's the left.
CNN. It's MSNBC who's doing it this time. It's the other side of the same corporate oligarchy coin. And believe me, 6 companies own all of this. And what those 2 companies agree on more than they agree on anything else, they agreed that they didn't want someone like Bernie Sanders and someone like Elizabeth Warren being president of the United States because those people might raise their taxes. Those people might raise the corporations' taxes. And so they had to destroy the progressives. And that is the only reason we even have Joe Biden as the nominee today, because he was the only candidate that could get enough black people to vote for him to beat Bernie Sanders. That is it. That is the only reason. When they did polls nationally of Democratic voters before South Carolina, the day before South Carolina, 17% of Democratic voters thought that Joe Biden was the best candidate to beat Donald Trump. 17%. Everybody else, 4 out of 5 Democrats knew Joe Biden's got visible dementia and he's not up for this. This ain't the time to go to Joe. But once he wins South Carolina, which he was always going to win, he was up by 50 points in that state. We always knew he was going to win South Carolina. The media did backflips for 3 days. Barack Obama picked up the phone and called Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Wendy Klobuchar, and they literally turned their planes around in the air. I'm not making this up. You can Google it. They were flying to campaign events for Super Tuesday. Barack Obama called Mayor Pete, and Mayor Pete said, hey, media guys are on the plane. We're actually heading back to South Bend. I have an announcement to make. And he dropped out of the race. So the establishment, the DNC establishment, including Barack Obama, took our entire primary system where Bernie Sanders had the most money ever raised, ever, most donations ever. Like all these metrics that are being blown out of the water, all of this, 1 million people had signed up to volunteer for his campaign nationwide. Joe Biden hadn't even campaigned in some of these Super Tuesday states. He didn't even have anybody on the ground, and he was 4th place. But then after 3 days of the media doing a complete and utter parade for Joe Biden winning South Carolina, you've manufactured the consent to believe that that's the guy we have to vote for. The media controls the narrative. The media controls what we believe the options are on this multiple choice test. And if we buy into what MSNBC and CNN are telling us, which again, if you look at MSNBC and CNN viewership, it's only people above 55 and 60. Who are the only people that voted for Joe Biden? Joe Biden lost every age group in this primary under 50. It's only people who watch MSNBC and CNN, as they literally compared a Jewish American who lost family in the Holocaust to Nazis multiple times in the same week. Multiple times in the same week, they compared him and his followers to Nazis. It's not an accident. Like, we're watching professional wrestling, and we're sitting here thinking that it matters whether Razor Ramon beats The Undertaker. It doesn't matter. Vince McMahon owns them both. He's writing both their checks. And Wall Street is writing the checks for both of these guys, and it doesn't actually matter because Wall Street's going to be good, and you're going to only get $1,200 check once.
See, this is when you're getting into things that are above Biden, above Trump. This is the elitism, the people that are really calling the shots, the people that are behind the scenes, right. The Rothschilds, all of those, the upper elite class. Now, Henry is here. Can you hear me?
Come on,
Henry. Yeah. Can I speak for me, please?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I want you to respond. It was a lot said, but
I hope you heard most of that, Henry.
Did you hear the response to? What do you have to say?
Well, like Ben is right. Like, I think that the problem is systemically is that the media is manipulating the American people. The United States is pretty much an oligarchy at this point. Absolutely. And to say that is not is a fucking lie. I think that like Ben has said, they have basically twisted the narrative so far to make Joe Biden a viable candidate. Like when he won, like when he's like our option, I'm like looking like, how did we get away? Like I said, Bernie Sanders did an amazing job. I think in general everybody did a better job than Biden.
They did.
Paula, Elizabeth, I think they all.
I trust Amy Klobuchar more than Joe Biden. She did a great job,
and that's fair, and that's completely fair. But I do think that there is scandal level things are going on behind the scenes, and we're at the mercy of the American government. And at this point, it's not just like our lives are on the line, our wealth is on the line, and it's not funny anymore. Like, we are being systemically manipulated, and it's scary because, like, when someone made a post on Twitter, they talk about like the lesser of two evils between Joe Biden and Trump. They both are evil. The system is evil.
It is.
The kingdom has to fall. The kingdom has to fall.
And
can I give my analogy? I don't want to cut you off, Henry, but I have an analogy for the lesser of two evils. Can we do that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
All right. If you're a slave, and that's all you've known as slavery your entire life, you've been 40 years a slave, right?
Right.
The worst case scenario is not 4 more years of slavery and then an opportunity for freedom. That's not the worst case scenario. The actual worst case scenario is the abolitionist party, the party that's fighting to end slavery. All of a sudden, they start taking campaign contributions from the cotton industry and the cotton lobby.
Right.
And now the cotton lobby needs the cotton production to continue to go up. So now the abolitionist party is taking the same money as the pro-slavery party. And so when the pro-slavery party introduces the largest expansion of slavery in the history of our country, the abolitionist party says, okay, we'll go along with it as long as you give all the slaves a one-time $1,200 check. Like, that's the worst case scenario, because you're no longer voting for the lesser of two evils. What you're actually voting for is perpetual slavery. You will never get free because the party that's supposed to be fighting for you to end slavery is now taking the same corrupt bribe money, legalized bribe money, and they're no longer working towards your freedom. So if you have to make a choice, what you actually want in that moment, you want the pro-slavery party to win, and the abolitionist party, who's corrupt, to get torn down and to have to go back to the drawing board to fire the people who were in charge of that abolitionist party because they're no longer representing the needs of the people that it's supposed to be representing. The Democratic Party is not representing us. We cannot influence the Republican Party. So at the end of the day, we should be working towards reforming the Democratic Party, and you cannot reform a party when you're voting for their corruption, when you're affirming their current state of affairs. So if I'm going to co-sign on your corruption, then I'm co-signing on your corruption. I can't expect you to change. You're not going to change. You just won an election.
That's dangerous ground you're prosing, because that's the Hebrews are choosing to stay in Egypt 4 more years because we know Moses is coming at the end of those 4 years.
We don't know Moses is coming, right?
That's the problem, though. We don't know.
Losing 4 years later, we get Joe Biden. But here's what I know. I know that Joe Biden has dementia right now. I know that Joe Biden isn't good when he's got all of his faculties. He's got dementia. And so we really don't know who's going to be running the government. We're electing a shadow government at this point. Will it be the vice president that's running it? Will it be his wife, like Nancy Reagan did for Ronald when he had dementia? Will it be the cabinet selected by Wall Street? Who will actually be running the country? We don't know. And the only way we accept that unknown and that dog crap, that plate of dog crap, is if we're terrified of the alternative, if you've disqualified the alternative. So you have to make Donald Trump into Orange Hitler. He has to be a larger-than-life figure that none of us can survive. Of course, we're all surviving it. Right now, we're all fine. Like, again, if you're a Honduran mom who had your child separated from you, you're not fine, right? But if you're a Black person in America, the problems that you're facing right now are the same problems you were facing under Barack Obama. If you're a Black person in Flint, Michigan, the water's still dirty today, the same as it was under Barack Obama. Your situation isn't getting better, but it's not getting any worse. It's just as bad as it was. And at the end of the day, you should be holding out for the water to get clean. That's the only thing that matters.
I'll say this. Now, I've said you said the situation is not getting any better, but it's not getting any worse. I've said Black people can survive anything. We've dealt with bad presidents. We've dealt with oppression. We've dealt with all this shit. This isn't new. But the Trump, he's an intricate figure in history and time. He's just so necessary, but he's so toxic because, number one, he's necessary because he's exposing all the racism. He's calling all this shit. Right. He's bringing it up. That's why I say he's necessary. There is no hiding it anymore. We're making people call this shit out. He's dangerous because the only danger I can say that he's dangerous is because he's inciting a race war. He's inciting prejudice. He's inciting all this shit against gay and trans. But he's dangerous. But I feel like to get to that next level, this shit is going to have to get worse. It's going to have to dig. Not saying that Trump needs to stay. But I want all this shit to fall immediately. This is my view. I don't want to have to play these politic games. I don't want to have to play that kind of shit. I want it to fall, but to really conceive that and to know America will fight tooth and nail, blood and tank to keep this system together as best they can. I don't know what's the outcome. Do you vote? Do you not vote? Who do you vote for? Henry, you got words? I see you.
I'll let y'all hear that.
I mean, it's just like, we're fucked either way. There's no like outcome in the foreseeable future that this is all going to pan out for us. I think we'll be better off after global warming hits, and by then it won't even matter.
Once Miami goes underwater, right?
Yeah, I just don't foresee it getting any better anytime soon. I think that because white people hold the majority in this country, they're going to hold on to the things that they need to hold on to keep the country in the way that they want to see it. And no matter how much we do as minorities, as double minorities, whatever way we exist, nothing's really practically going to change. There's going to be some stunt in the next 2 or 3 months. There's going to be another stunt in the next 4 to 6 months. So it's like, it's like, if you want to vote, vote. If you don't want to vote, don't vote. I think that Trump is the devil we know right now. So It's kind of like, it's easier to manage because this is the hell we're living in. And I think everybody's under the understanding that because of COVID-19 and then following with the protests, you know, like we've all been living like in our mild apocalypse, and we're just like, okay, what can happen next? Nobody's not really shocked at this point. Like murder hornets, cannibal rats, we're all here for it. Bring on the foolishness. But at the end of the day, it's just like people individually need to make the decision they can sleep at within the night. That's all I can say about that.
That's very good.
So if you can sleep with your choices, sleep with your choices, but do not condemn someone else for their choices. Because when the election happened with Trump and a lot of black people didn't, well, not say a lot, a percentage of black people didn't vote. People were like, well, you didn't vote, so you have nothing to say. But at the end of the day, it's just like they exercise their choice. Now they live in a system that still affects them. People are welcome to their opinion, whether you agree with it or not. But generally, like I tell most people, I'm more so voting for the state and local level because as I mean, don't get me wrong, all white leadership is trash, no matter who it is.
Yeah.
Everybody has some interest to do something foolish. Cuomo was trash. De Blasio's definitely trash in New York.
He's in New York,
I'm in New York.
everybody.
So they're definitely trash.
Oh, De Blasio got black kids out here cheerleading police, driving cars over protesters. And I'm just in there like, are you for real, bro? Are you for real?
It's just trash. Like literally, like I was talking about this on Twitter. The only reason why that curfew happened was to quell the protests. The only reason why New York opened up a week early was to get people back to work. Because literally what's happening right now is that people are getting, like New York, majority of us are getting unemployment. I'm getting unemployment. So we have more than ample time to go out and protest. Because guess what? The bills are still being paid. Mm-hmm. We're not missing the fucking red cent. I got to be nobody's job for 8 hours. I can protest for 8 hours. Because guess what? I ain't got to be nowhere, but guess what? But I'll still have a roof over my fucking head. Right. And de Blasio wants us back to work so we'll get off the streets. And it's just all just, and it's like, and that's when it comes down to the Democrats are trash as well.
They are.
So
they are.
So just
can we speak to this though for a minute? Because I feel like we make the mistake when we get caught up in our emotions and we vote emotionally, and then we don't think through, we don't game theory it out. What are the unintended consequences that are going to come? Play this situation out. Remember that after 8 years of George Bush being so bad, the country was ready for a black president with a Muslim name who was running on effectively Bernie Sanders' platform. He was going to give everybody universal health care, raise taxes on the rich, end the wars, and bring transformational change to the government and racial healing. That was Barack Obama's platform, and America voted for it. We voted for it in overwhelming numbers. We voted for it. He didn't deliver that. And after 8 years of not delivering that, people's lives had gotten worse. And that's what led to Donald Trump. When the income inequality continued to grow for the next 8 years, that opened the space for the demagogue to come in and say, we got to drain the swamp. Everybody's lying to you. It's all rigged. It's a scam. It's the failures of Barack Obama's policies that opened the door for a demagogue like Donald Trump to happen. And you got to understand, same as the failures of George Bush opened the door for for Barack Obama, right? Mm-hmm. So if we elect Joe Biden, who has dementia, during a global pandemic, and during the country's on fire, and he's already at every turn in his entire career, he's been willing to negotiate away Social Security benefits. So like it's completely and utterly plausible. He did this as vice president. He came to the grand bargain with Mitch McConnell, and it was the Freedom Caucus, the Tea Party mofos in Congress, that stopped Social Security cuts from coming that Joe Biden had negotiated. So like, make no mistake, we could get 4 years and then say 8 more years of Mayor Pete or Kamala Harris, some other corporate sellout, right? We could get 12 years of Democratic rule and the income inequality continue to grow in this country. What does that open the door for on the other side? When the pendulum has swung to the Democrats, the ball's in your hand, Democrats, everything's getting worse because you're not actually bringing solutions to the problems. Then we go to the other side, we could get someone worse than Trump because we're not requiring our politicians to tell us the truth.
Right. And that's the thing that like Barack Obama really fucked up because people want Barack to be the black hope for Negroes.
And what did Cornel West call him? A black mascot for Wall Street?
He is.
Well, you know, well, Cornel West is the mascot too, but that's a whole nother situation.
I'm Cornel West guy.
I'm not for Cornel West. I had an interaction with him in a social event. I don't really care for her.
See, talk about your feelings again.
No, like, you know, you're rude to me. You're rude to me in public. I ain't got shit to say to you in private. But suffice to say, Barack fucked up because him and Michelle, they both are systemically a problem for me. Like,
Ooh.
they both respectability politics so far that they fucked us. And versus that, like, I get it. That first term, I understand you played it to the vest. You want to ruffle the feathers too much. You knew that second term was the last term. You could did anything in that motherfucking house that you wanted to. Anything. Now you know Mitch McConnell gonna play his game and push back against him.
That's actually backwards, to be honest. It was the first 2 years when they had control of the Congress and the Senate. What do you call it? Filibuster-proof majority in the Senate before Ted Kennedy died. That was when Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, could have sat down in a room and changed anything about America that those three people agreed on. Anything. Right. They could have ended mass incarceration. They could have given everyone universal health care. All they needed to do was be able to control their own caucuses, the Democrats in the Senate, the Democrats in the House, and they could have passed everything without a single Republican vote. So once they lost the House and Paul Ryan became the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan then had a check on everything Barack Obama wanted to do for the next 6 years. But of course, the only reason they lost the House was because they didn't deliver what the fuck they promised in the first 2 years. Had you done what you said you were going to do, people would have continued to vote Democrat.
And that ties into both of what you're saying, that Barack didn't do what he was trying to play the team. He was trying to play it core. He could have done it in that first time when they had the control, but he didn't want to ruffle the feathers. He didn't want to be like, oh, this black president is in here doing all of this. So he was going to play the politics.
But that's fundamentally not true either. You remember we're about to talk about Anonymous hacking into a law firm later? WikiLeaks hacked into the DNC server. And one of the emails that they pulled off the DNC server was an email from the CEO of Citibank to the Obama transition team saying, this is the cabinet that we approve of. And every single member that the Citibank CEO that Wall Street approved of became Barack Obama's first term cabinet. So when you choose Rahm Emanuel, Nancy Pelosi's lackey, and you choose a cabinet chosen by Wall Street because you took more money from Wall Street than any candidate ever has during the 2008 election, you've actually corrupted and compromised yourself before you've ever stepped foot in the White House. And that's the reality of what happened. We play all this respectability politics talk that Barack didn't know, he was inexperienced, blah, 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 blah. No, Barack Obama took corporate money, allowed corporations and the establishment to put people in place that would block any type of progressive legislation. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want universal health care. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want a Green New Deal. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want these things that he was saying he was going to do. Nancy Pelosi is worth $200 million. She doesn't want her taxes to go up. And she's never going to let her taxes go up as long as she's Speaker of the House. So we've got these mythological narratives that Barack Obama was on our side, but was just too timid, just too inexperienced, blah, blah, blah. No, Barack Obama is brilliant. That Negro is brilliant. He managed to go from a community organizer to a state senator to a national senator to the president of the United States in the matter of 2.5 years? Like, that dude knew exactly what he was doing. And he knows exactly why he's worth $84 million today. They know why they have a Martha's Vineyard house worth $15 million today, because that's the game. You do what Wall Street wants you to do, and then Wall Street takes great care of you when you leave the White House.
I mean, basically what all you're saying is it all needs to fucking burn. I don't see any other solution. I don't see any other way it can go on. Now, we can sit here and talk about Joe, Dementia Joe, Barack, and Trump forever, but we have to move on. And I need to move on here to the reparations that's been proposed by Bob Johnson, Robert L. Johnson of BET and all of that shit. He says that he needs to get reparations to stain of slavery bill, the $14.7 trillion price tag. And that's going to be $767 one-time cash payment over 42 million African American eligible descendants. Calculation based on income, education, savings, and if you're a homeowner or not.
Oof. Ain't that
now,
that's a number right there.
$14 trillion and giving everybody $340 whatever $1,000. Number one.
Hey, that's a payment. Like that's a payment.
It is a payment, but I will take it. But you know, is it enough? Is it enough?
No.
That's what my problem is.
I'll say why it's not enough. It's not enough because I'll say this. I mean, and maybe because like Ben is much more adept at politics than I am. It seems
me too.
Much more intelligent grasp than I do. I just understand what I can understand. But I do feel like while the $350,000 price tag is lovely, and a nigga's not gonna say no to $355,000.
Man, we wouldn't say no to $3,500. What are you talking about?
We didn't say no to $1,200.
Right. But what I think needs to happen is that not only do we get that money, we get our own nation in the United States, and we annex and make our own country. I think that like beyond just the fact that we get that money, we get land also, guaranteed land, untouched, all hours, no questions. I don't know how much of a range of the United States we will have. I feel like in that deal also there needs to be compensation to the indigenous population of this country as well, because we basically, well, not we, but white folks came into this country and violated their land. They need, like, I don't even understand like how Americans don't understand concentration camps, but have reservations in our country. That's another conversation.
They don't teach you that in school.
Right. But I feel like the indigenous population needs to be respected. They need to push white folks into one corner of the motherfucking country, and we indigenous populations take the rest. That's it, plain and simple. Squeeze them niggas into California. We'll give them, you can have California, but the rest is ours. I feel like we all should get our 40 acres. Those 40 acres should be calculated amongst the 13% of the population that we are. That we should own 13% of the country, period. Non-negotiable. We put on our own leaders. We make our own leadership. We start our own nation. And I think only because I have, y'all will probably read me for this. I don't know if y'all read comics, but in the X-Men books, this is going on right now. And the mutants have made their own sovereign nation and have allowed all mutants to come, good, bad, or evil. And they've allowed them to build their own police, their own island, their own country, their own policies, their own laws, their own council. See, they don't have a government of one leader; they have a council of 12, and they make an assessment as a council about what should be done in the nation. And the council is made up of your good and bad. And one thing I love about this, how they constructed it in the comics, with explicit details. They talk about the exports, how the nation works, and everything. But I do feel like the only way we are going to be safe is if we have our own nation and we're allowed to protect that nation any way we want to protect that nation. And I don't feel like me sitting in the United States with $350,000 is going to still keep me safe. It won't make a difference because they played that shit with that 40 acres and a mule. They'll do that shit again to us. It just doesn't make sense to like hope that me having wealth I'm still not going to be getting higher interest rates for buying a house, higher interest rates for I'm still going to pay for it regardless back to the country. I'm fucked either way. So it's like, unless you are going to give me land and we get a piece of the country, if that's from Texas all the way up to motherfucking Maryland, I don't want to hear anything else. We want our own sovereign nation. That's what we want. That's what we should get. Now, Black America has their own unpacking to do on some other things, but it's not going to be perfect. But if you really think that $350,000 is like a sorry, that's not a sorry. It doesn't absolve what happened. It doesn't make me feel any better about what happened. Especially when we systemically, not only should we get, we literally should be getting paid for life for the next 3 or 4 generations, because it's not like with slavery that all that shit ended. After slavery, you get Jim Crow, Reconstruction, you got motherfucking Tuskegee Airmen, you got Henrietta Lacks, you got motherfucking police brutality, you got redlining. You guys have been literally fucking with us since we walked into this motherfucker. So if you really think that $350,000 is going to be like, okay, Shake, we're good. Nah, motherfucker. I want your house. I want your land. Tell tell motherfucking Skylar and Karen that I'm coming over and I'm picking up my house and I want it right now.
I want your house.
I want your house, Karen.
You're in my house. Excuse me, Mr. McCormick. You're in my house. And I want my house back right now.
Run it.
And my Native American friend wants his house too. And we all should get our shit back. Period. I feel like none of this shit is negotiable, but they have literally sat. How do you sit in the nation as the white majority? You have literally decimated every populace on this continent. How do you say you, like Jane Elliott says it all the time? How do you discover a nation with people already in it?
Yes, literally.
Like, I feel like you give me $350,000 would be very cute and adorable. But Mr. McCormick, I want my house. I want it right now.
And I need that land. I agree with the land. I agree with all of that, what you're saying.
I think owning property, like our own education system, everything. Like, I think Black people are well enough in depth to get this done. And because of like how we run entertainment, how like American culture is Black culture, which we will talk about later, that without us, we are the commodity. We are like, what you gonna do without Beyonce? Huh? What you gonna do without athletes? Like 7% of the NFL is Negroes.
What you mean they got Taylor Swift, bro?
Who?
They got Taylor.
Do they?
Who?
Do they?
Who? You know what I say about when you say Taylor Swift? Who?
Right.
Who?
My favorite is still Kanye. I'm gonna let you finish in a minute, but
right. I don't. Oh God. Not
that ain't for me, right?
No, that's Kanye.
Okay, that was a joke. I actually think Taylor Swift is talented.
Oh, I know you don't.
Right. I think for like at the end of the day, I think that's really what needs to happen. I think it should be guaranteed land, and not just the money. I want loan forgiveness. Any debt that we have should be removed. Everybody gets a brand new start. Everyone. Period.
And for that to happen, we would have to burn this bitch down.
I still don't think that would accomplish that goal. Like Brumman just said we need to set up Wakanda here in America, and
pretty much
like give us the vibranium and let us handle our own shit. We can create the wish list. We can create the mythical wish list of what we would like to happen and what would be justice to us, right?
Right.
And I'm with you all day. I don't think we should ever tell any Black person or any Native American person, right? Like, what would it take for you to feel okay and feel like we even? Like, I don't get to tell you what that feels like for you, right? I'm a very logical person. I'm not a terribly emotional person. And I'm more in the line of thought of Martin Luther King, that this country is so far gone in terms of race that reparations is not feasible, that it's not something we could get past through. We're literally sitting here saying that we don't have the power as Black people to demand of the Democratic Party, the party that would not exist without our votes, to demand that they give us at this critical moment someone with a functioning brain who has not built their political career or advanced their political career on putting Black people in jail. And we don't feel, I haven't talked to a single Black person that believes we could make that demand and get that. I haven't talked to anyone.
I don't believe that either.
That it's possible.
I don't believe it's possible. Right. How is it possible?
So if we don't think that's possible, maybe we should put Wakanda on the shelf. Like, but I'm not telling you shouldn't want that shouldn't be what it would take for you to be right in your chest, Henry. Like, and I also don't know what kind of apologies you used to getting, but I've never gotten a $350,000 apology from anyone ever. And,
but how do you hold the Democratic committee accountable? Hold your vote. Hold your vote.
The Joe Biden situation. It's real simple. If every Black person, and again, it doesn't have to be every Black person. It can just be the young ones. It can just be the ones that are out there marching these streets protesting. If they make it clear that because of what is taking place and where we're at in this moment, that Joe Biden is just simply not a viable choice. He's not up to this moment. He's not big enough for a moment that is this big. And we will not be supporting him, period, nonstop. And then that really became, it wouldn't even take 10% of us to say it. You know what I mean? It would just take enough of us that it becomes a groundswell. Let me give you a great example. The Me Too movement happened a couple years back, maybe 3-4 years ago. And suddenly all these white women that have ever been touched by a movie Hollywood producer or anybody, they came out and they're like, me too, I've been abused. And I don't mean to say that in a way that's denigrating women's abuse. I'm not. But take Al Franken. Al Franken is a senator in Minnesota who has been twice elected, is one of the smartest and most effective senators, a former writer for Saturday Night Live. He's so charming and funny that we thought he would be the perfect foil to Donald Trump. Some people did, because he'd be able to disarm him with humor. This dude was powerful. This dude was a high-ranking Democrat. The accusations against him were, some women said anonymously that when I took photos with him at public events, he might have touched my butt. That was it. It was not I whipped my junk out and started masturbating. It was not I shoved my hand inside somebody. It was not I sexually assaulted somebody. It was not I put my pubes on a can of soda like Clarence Thomas. It was not I got a blowjob from an intern. It was he might have touched my butt. And we don't know if he just let his hand fall during a photo because he was tired, or if he actually molested a woman. We don't even know. And Kristen Gillibrand goes, in a moment like this, we cannot tolerate being the party that condones this type of behavior while holding Donald Trump accountable. And overnight, one of the most powerful and popular sitting senators is forced to resign. He's forced to resign because there's just enough public pressure to say, Joe, in this moment, or Al, in this moment, we can't have you on the team. The moment's too big, and we don't want to look like hypocrites. And so all we have to do is create that same pressure on the Democratic Party to say that in this moment, if we're trying to not look like hypocrites as a Democratic Party, we can't nominate the guy that was the architect of the 1994 crime bill. We can't do the guy that wrote the discrepancy sentences for crack cocaine and powder cocaine in sentencing. We can't have that guy. We can't have the senator from MBNA Bank, which was his nickname when he was a senator, because he took so much money from these banks. We can't have him be the nominee during a global financial crisis as well, because we have a depression right now. We have 40% unemployment for people making under $40,000 a year. So we have the ability to create the pressure to remove a guy who isn't the freaking nominee. He's not the nominee yet. He's the presumptive nominee. Not a single delegate vote has been cast to make Joe Biden the nominee, yet we as Black people don't even believe that's freaking possible. It's totally possible. We just have to be willing to say, we'll vote for the orange guy. Because that's politics. You can't hold someone accountable if they can take your vote for granted. Like Lawrence O'Donnell, the guy who comes on after Rachel Maddow, appeared in a Michael Moore documentary. And he said when he worked as the head of chief of staff for a powerful senator in the 80s and 90s, he said, you know who I never paid attention to? People on the left. Because who were they going to vote for? The Republican? He's literally telling you we could take them for granted because they weren't going to vote for the other guy. If you don't show a senator, it flex your power and say, we will vote for the other guy, you can never hold them accountable because all of these people are rational actors. They respond to incentives. The incentive structure right now is to take as much money as humanly possible from Wall Street and billionaires so that you can run as many ads as possible and swamp your opponent and win elections. If the math of that changes to because of your positions, because of who you are, you're going to lose Black voters and they're not going to vote for you. Therefore, you, no matter how much money you have, you won't be able to win an election. And that's actually how we got Donald Trump. And people don't want to talk about that. So Hillary Clinton lost the state of Michigan by 10,000 votes. Do you know in the state of Michigan, there were 90,000 ballots that voted Democratic straight ticket all the way down, Democratic governor, Democratic congressman, Democratic dog catcher. And they left the presidential line blank. They refused to vote for Hillary Clinton. They refused to vote for Barack Obama's handpicked successor. You know why? Because it's the Clintons that signed NAFTA that shipped all their jobs overseas. Because it's Barack Obama who's let the water in Flint still be dirty. We won't do it. And when they interviewed these people, they interviewed some Black guys in Milwaukee, a New York Times story did, and in a barbershop. And the guy said, yeah, I didn't vote for him, and I don't care that Donald Trump won. I don't care. 8 years of Democratic voting. I voted for Barack Obama twice, and my life got worse. That's the real the real worst case scenario is that you elect a president and now you're responsible for what happens and people's lives get worse. So now they turn to any alternative. And that could be a freaking police state. And people will be willing to take it because they just want something different. That's exactly what's happening right now. People are so afraid of Donald Trump getting reelected that we're willing to eat a plate of dog shit. No one believes in Joe Biden. Nobody believes in this guy. There aren't any pro-Joe guys. At least people believed in Hillary Clinton. People were like, I'm with her. I'm a white woman and we're going to get a white woman president. People were amped about it. Nobody believes in Joe Biden. If this guy's not vulnerable for us to flex our muscle and get him out, we should stop talking about reparations altogether, because that shit ain't never gonna happen if we don't have the power and we don't have the willingness to come together and demand a viable alternative to Donald Trump. Stop talking to me about Wakanda. It ain't gonna happen.
And now,
okay, well, let me say this. Wait. Let me clear this up very clearly. While I am a dreamer and that's who I am, and I'm very excited about these things, I'm very much aware that human beings are trash. That I do understand that people generally are not going to do the right thing. Now, while that is just my hopeful ideal, I know the reality I live in. The pandemic and COVID-19 and everything that's going on, I've always been aware that people are trash. I've been aware that people have been trash since I was a kid. But I am not hoping that people do the right thing, because they generally don't. Like, people generally are out for themselves, and I get it. The best thing you will protect your own interests first and people in your immediate circle. So, don't get me wrong. Wakanda sounds like a great idea. I realize it may not happen. I understand that reparations are a good idea. I realize it may not happen. But the part of me that like would like to see what would happen, that's what I would like to see what happen. But I know for a fact that human beings are trash. They're not even respecting the environment enough to do the right thing behind that. So just like, right. I understand what you're saying, but I don't want you to think that like I'm just like this dreamful, hopeful person, just like, oh, rainbows and sunshine and everything's going to be great. No, human beings are awful creatures.
They are
awful.
I totally agree.
Like, they're very selfish. They want instant gratification, especially Americans. We live in a capitalist system. It's awful. So do I think this shit's going to turn around tomorrow? Absolutely not. Am I going to see it in my lifetime? Absolutely not. But I would like that, but I know that's not going to happen. I don't want you to think that like I'm walking, like I'm in the car, like, oh my God, like I just want everybody to be happy and hug each other and smoke weed and let's just be great. No,
I guess my point was, if somebody offered you that deal that includes $350,000 into you and your mama's bank account, you better go ahead and cash that check. You better cash it quickly.
No, I mean,
before they change
all
their
my
mind.
green. I'm not gonna say no to that, but just like I don't want people to think that that will be enough of an apology. I think that like, wow, great, I'll take money. All money's green, but I don't want people to think that like that should bring peace, or that it's okay, or that everything is forgiven. No, right. Like, because like I said before, it's like indirectly we're still gonna be giving that money back to the country, and they're not like giving us higher interest rates on loans, or still redlining us and protect us from like we can't get certain property, or whatever the case may be. Like, there's still gonna be some scam involved. There's always some backhanded scam involved. So while I would love us to have a sovereign nation and be like a bunch of black people being black and excellent, I know for a fact that people are going to chase after their best interests. It's the exact same way in the black community why cisgender heterosexual people do not respect the LGBTQ community. Why they can literally sit around in Minnesota and sit there and be aware of George Floyd being killed and protest and rally and then beat a trans woman up inside of a store 20 deep of just men. That's how the world is. People are in the scope of their right now. People are in the scope of their immediate gratification. People are in immediate scope of their circle versus like going outside of the bubble they exist in. There's a lot of reasons sometimes. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland originally, and Prince George's County is the wealthiest black county in the United States. And them niggas live in a bubble. They live in a post-racial world where they think that never happened, because you don't experience racism in Prince George's County. You only experience colorism and classism. You don't experience racism in any form whatsoever. You have black leadership, you have black cops, you have black educators. So you see yourself everywhere. It's like living in the Caribbean islands. You see yourself. So you don't understand the complexities of racism. So when I talk about race with my family, they're just like, but they're looting and rioting, and that's awful. They're destroying businesses. Because you live in a bubble of black businesses. But in New York City, burn this shit. Like
Fifth Avenue, it ain't yours.
Right, exactly. So it's like, I think that people, the problem that really comes down is that people lack perspective and compassion. And they don't, if they can't at least see somebody else's like narrative, understand, not asking you to agree, asking you to understand. And people minimally don't want to do that. Americans are so sought up on like agreeing and disagreeing, or yes and no, always everything exists in a binary. Why can't you just understand what's going on?
Right.
Versus you trying to make sure that everybody agrees with you. Like everybody wants to be right. And that's inherently dangerous. That's why the government is inherently dangerous. Because they just want to be right. For right now, regardless of the long-term effects of that crime bill, of the shit that Trump is doing with these races and emboldening them, like all these things are going to have long-reaching effects. Period. Right. That doesn't mean that like I still don't have hopes that things will like turn around one day, but the right now is telling me that we're fucked. And we're going to be fucked for a long time. So I hope you niggas got good therapists. I hope you got good weed and good liquor. And you got some good sex on the way. But it's still like, at the end of the day, it's just like, it's going to be rough. And like you said, like it's going to, like, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. It's like understanding what Trump is and what Trump is situated. We all are in the condition of understanding what we're going to walk into if he gives another 4 more years. We know the foolishness we may experience. But with Joe Biden, he may walk in there, absent-minded Joe, may walk in there and like, who said about a crime bill? Let's make another one.
Again, that's not my concern. My concern is that the prison industrial complex contributes to its presidential campaign. And so
I agree.
Owes favors to the people who run these for-profit prisons. The worst story that nobody want to talk about from the last 4 months ain't got nothing to do with COVID. It's garbage men in New Orleans who were being deemed essential workers and forced to go continue to pick up trash without any type of protective gear during the lockdown for COVID. Right. And they went on strike because they were only getting $10 an hour. And they fired them all and replaced them with prison labor that they were paying pennies an hour. That is the worst story of all of COVID. That you literally could be getting paid. I want to be clear about this. My father was a garbage man. My father was a garbage man for the city of Orlando for 20 plus years. He retired as a garbage man. Do you know the life that we lived with the salary of a garbage man in the 80s and early 90s? We had a house in College Park, which is like Winter Park. It's one of the most expensive parts of Orlando. We had a car. My mom was disabled. I went to a Christian private school. And I never worried about crime because my neighborhood was so nice and safe. And that was on a $20,000 a year salary, which when you adjust for inflation is almost $70,000 a year in today's money. And my father had a GED. So he was willing to be a laborer and was able to provide a good life for his son and his wife. And these guys, fast forward 20, 30 years, doing the exact same job during a pandemic, are making $10 an hour. So in today's money, that's like 20 grand. So that's a third of what my father was making for the same job. That is how our economy has been restructured. And we're telling them that $10 an hour is too much. We'll replace you with modern day slaves. Like, that's where we're at. And the fact that Joe Biden ain't furious about that and isn't talking about that tells you everything you need to know about whether or not he's going to prioritize this in his administration. Like, that story is outrageous. Outrageous. And they don't care.
No, not at all.
CARES Act was the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the nation. They keep saying $450 billion made available to Wall Street and bridge loans. But no, when you use that $450 billion as collateral, you can actually loan out $4.5 trillion because you just have to have collateral for 10% of the loan as a bank. You don't actually have to have all the money that you're loaning out. So it's actually $4 trillion to Amazon, to Target, to Walmart, to Google, to Apple. And you got a check for $1,200. And in every other rich country in the world, everybody got $2,000 a month checks to stay home and be safe, and they already have universal health care. America is a scam. They're running a complete game on us. And that bill, that CARES Act, that passed 97-0 in the Senate and passed with a voice vote in Congress. It is the TARP Act that caused Occupy Wall Street times 10. Or excuse me, times 4. Times 4. 4 times. I think Joe Biden will be a disaster for this country. And I don't think that Donald Trump has not been a disaster. But the benefit is that Nancy Pelosi has a check on him and he can't pass anything without her approval. Granted, she'll still approve the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the country to the top 1%, but he's not going to be able to pass any put black people in chains legislation, no matter how racist he might be. No matter how racist he might be. Our biggest concern is probably the Supreme Court. Well, fine, win the Senate. Win the Senate then. And then he doesn't have the ability to put anybody on the Supreme Court.
You've never lied about. Oh God, you never lied about that.
As I've listened to everything, y'all have said a lot, and I've listened and absorbed both perspectives of this, and I've come to the conclusion that the only viable answer is, I know this is not fairy tales and gumdrops, because I think logically as well. Me and you, Ben, have had deep going back and forth about Biden and shit before.
And you saw the bullshit in the primary before even I did.
Exactly.
Like,
so I see things.
Over.
So I relate to both. My thing is, I'm gonna cut it real quick with it. This country is unreformable. This country is unredeemable. There's no fucking way that we're gonna be able to get any amount of whatever demographic to come together to demand a Democratic committee, and definitely not affect the Republican committee to hold someone accountable enough to get what we need. We're not going to get that to happen. Number one, because that's relating to what Henry said. People have their own self-interest. They're not going to believe. Some people are not going to believe. Some people are going to fight for it, and it's not going to work, because a lot of people just feel like I feel this shit is unredeemable. Because if you listen to everything y'all said, you're hitting so many factors, the modern day slavery, and then you're going into the housing and the garbage workers making $10 an hour. That's a lot of different aspects of a system that's fucked. You can't reform all that. That's lifetimes. That's lifetimes of work of reform. Of changing bills. They won't change shit out the Constitution, and people talking about going back to that shit was written when your ancestors were slaves. Who gives a fuck about the Constitution? I don't. I just like the first one where it says I can protest, and then they try to take that from you. This shit is, I agree with you, Henry. We are the generation to tear this as best we can down. I don't know if it's going to be in rubble, but every great empire will come to an end. America is an empire.
Decline.
It will fall.
All of the precursors of an empire in decline are red lights right now.
Literally, like it's literally textbook how an empire falls. The people revolting in a major way is a really good, like y'all are really on the brink of just, oh shit. Policies are trying to get pushed immediately. In my life, I've never seen people try to push policy. Kids getting killed in Sandy Hook. They weren't pushing gun reform at all.
No,
right? They didn't.
Everybody has their self-interest, and that's the problem. Until people realize that they need to do what needs to be done for the country as a whole, they would never do that.
Self-interest and incentive structures. If I can provide a smidge of hope to the burn it all down, everything's perspective. I said I'm in line with Martin Luther King in that he didn't believe at the end, near his assassination, that reparations was feasible in a country that had as much racial strife as America. Right. You couldn't get the votes that you needed to make it happen. Mm-hmm. So what he believed did have a chance of happening were universal programs that enveloped poor white people in West Virginia who were getting conned by Trump, bring them into the movement and make a poor people's movement, a poor people's campaign, so that now you have universal programs. So when everyone's criticizing Bernie Sanders, he's against reparations and he's for universal health care. Like, I'll put it like this. If the reparations plan that was offered to us tomorrow was every Black person in America gets free at point of service health care. You go to the doctor, you don't pay anything out of your pocket, period. You get health care. Any student loan debt that you have is wiped away.
Right.
When your kids go to college, they can go to college for free. We're going to completely and utterly reform the criminal justice system from top to bottom. To basically what we're talking about when we talk about defund the police. That's what Bernie was proposing. If they offered that to us as reparations and reforming the education system as well, we would take it.
Yeah.
So Bernie Sanders was offering that to everyone, and some black people were like, nah, he ain't for reparations, so he ain't for us. No, he's trying to get something passed that will actually give all black people health care. Right. And so you can't pass a bill with Mitch McConnell signing off on it that says only black people get universal health care. That ain't gonna work. And even if it did work, white people would sabotage it. They would intentionally, just like they do with Medicaid right now. Medicaid is a program that's a great program, but it's underfunded. You have to go to the worst doctors. You have to go to, it's a 2-track system if you have Medicaid versus you have private health insurance. What you need is everyone in the same boat so that now white people have the same vested interest in the healthcare plan being successful because they can't sabotage it because it's their healthcare plan. You want to fix the public school system in America? Eliminate the private school system in America. You don't have an option, rich people, to send your kids to an expensive private school, and we're no longer going to fund schools based on property taxes. Every school's going to get exact same amount of funding. Every single school, whether you're in Pine Hills or you're in Windermere, same funding. Now, the parents in Windermere will be lobbying the governor, Ron DeSantis, to say, you better freaking increase education spending because my kids ain't going to go to no crappy school. You have to get everyone's skin in the game so that they're acting in their self-interest, and now you change the incentive structure of our country. That's how it works in other countries. Literally, we do things backwards on purpose. Because we want a 2-track system. We want a public school system that's failing and a private school system that rich people can send their kids to and no problems. That's what the country wants, the people at the top anyways. And we have to be willing to demand universal programs because reparations would have a ton of unintended consequences. One, the resentment of having a black president for 8 years led to white people revolting and giving us Donald Trump, right? Because they was just mad. They was big mad over a black guy in charge. They loved every part of Obamacare except the name Obamacare.
Exactly.
Right? So you're going to give people reparations and you're going to see what Karen looks like then? Karen's going to be off the chain.
Out of control.
And then you're going to further divide up black people because you're only going to give it to the black people that are African descendants of slaves. So now you go to the same project and you give this apartment a check for $350,000, but not the ones on either side that are Jamaican or Haitian descent, even though everyone's 2 generations of being in America. Everyone's dealing with the exact same oppression 2 generations later, the same policing, the same failing schools, but now some kids in those failing schools, some black kids get lifted out of it and the rest of them get left behind. Now the black community is going to turn on itself the same way Karen and West Virginia coal miner is turning on this program. So if you game theory this out, what does it actually look like when you implement it? It looks like America becoming more divided, more hateful, and now you just got white people throwing bricks through Target. Like you've got a different type of revolution of people who feel left out because their poorness and their inability to feed their kids is somehow not important because my great-granddaddy owns your great-granddaddy. They ain't gonna hear that. It's true, it's valid, it's factual. It is a debt that is owed, but when you game it out and actually play it out, I personally don't see how it works out to the benefit of the whole. And maybe it works out to those 42 million black people, and I ain't mad at that. Like, I'm not mad at that. If you can get it, right? But I'm still worried about my Jamaican brothers and sisters, my Mexican brothers and sisters, my trans. Like, we're all in this together. And to me, that's the mentality we should be trying to promote. But it's also the winning strategy. The winning strategy is to get these poor white people that are voting for Donald Trump to vote for a populist who is actually offering them solutions to make their lives better. And then you build a coalition that's the 1% can't overwhelm because the coalition is too big. The coalition is too strong.
I completely agree. And you got me.
Ain't that a photo?
Because I mean, it's if that was the reform that would happen, what Bernie was high key proposing, then yes, that would be acceptable. But and then a lot of that shit was starting to get implemented when COVID was running havoc.
Donald Trump actually implemented Medicare for all for people that test positive for COVID and don't have health insurance. If you test positive for COVID and you have no health insurance, the hospital has to treat you. They're going to get paid at Medicare rates, and they cannot bill you for the freaking difference. Donald Trump passed Medicare for all for people with COVID. And Joe Biden said, if Medicare for all came across my desk, I would veto it. Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy. What am I voting for this guy for? If I am desperate for change as a community of color, as a group of poor people and white people in West Virginia, as a group of oppressed transgender Black women, like if I am desperate for change and my only option is to peacefully vote for Joe Biden and hope, or pick up a brick and throw it through a window of Target, the logical, rational answer or choice is to burn down a Target. I'm not advocating for that. What I'm saying is the Democratic Party is not giving me a better choice than to burn down Target to enact change. And that is insane. It's JFK, not Malcolm X. It's JFK that said when you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. That's a white man that said that. And it's true because it's played out in the history of this country. They cut the heads off the Queen of France. We've had revolution after revolution, violent, bloody revolutions. And where the revolution really starts is when the foot soldiers of the oligarchs, in this case, the police, the National Guard, when they refuse to protect the property of the 1% over the citizens' lives. When that moment happens, the police go, I'm just not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. This is not what I signed up for. This is terrible. And I came to protect America, not to shoot Americans,
right,
to protect the profits of Target.
Right.
When that moment happens, when that tipping point happens, then the whole thing falls apart, and it falls apart quickly.
That's very, very quickly. That's what I was expecting here. This is what I'm expecting here, and that's because that's what I'm waiting on. Like they have to, like you're saying, the oligarchy has to turn to be with the people, and until that happens, this shit will not fall. So I got to get off this damn Biden. This has been the whole.
Thank you for this space, Chris. Like, thank you for Will. Sorry, I have a friend that's named Will. He looks like you, and he also goes by Chris. And I call him Will Chris. So I apologize. But thank you, Will, for this space to just get that off my chest. I appreciate.
No, yes, you've educated me in a lot of things that I am needed to be educated on politics as well. So I appreciate that. Now, y'all did mention the media as propaganda. I just want to touch right quick on to that. And while I'm mentioning that, you know that Anonymous has come back and emerged, and he revealed those court documents while Jeffrey Epstein was charged for the 13-year-old girl rape and all that Donald Trump was also a co-defendant in that trial. The paperwork has been released. It's on my Facebook if you didn't see it. But that's when they threatened my page too. Yeah.
Censoring us.
They threatened my page. But I mean, Anonymous already said they're not into the aspect of changing people's credit scores. They're not into the aspect of doing anything that we would demand or would want them to do. They're just here to expose the truth, which I feel that's noble and morally kind of them, I guess.
They're whistleblowers.
They're whistleblowers.
Period.
And the media, like you were saying earlier, I couldn't get it out then. The media is like they did George Bush, and how they did how Fox News did Obama is how CNN and all of them or MSNBC are doing Trump. I get this all a media ploy and propaganda, how they make these protests look, how they only show certain things, and because of us on Twitter and social media forcing these videos and us filming this shit, and we're like, no, this is what happened. A perfect example, the guy with the bow and arrow, he was going and saying, oh, the two black guys came and he beat me up, and I was there because I said all lives matter, and you're shooting people out there with bow and arrows. If nobody was filming that, it would have they only got that on the news. So it's all, and they showing videos of cops hugging and doing the cha-cha slide with protesters, all of these things, but they're not showing where they're beating these protesters and then hitting them in the head and then blinding them with rubber bullets. It's not showing where they killed that little white girl even for gassing her to fucking death. They show that old white man getting trampled on the streets of Buffalo. And Trump says that was a conspiracy because he's part of Antifa.
Look, but a made up terrorist group. Like, have you ever met anybody?
No, that's not an organization, people.
Like, I've never even heard of someone. There's no way there's 2,000 Antifa members nationwide.
He did that so he can claim any protesters to be Antifa and charge them for hate crime activities.
Quick question, right? We got all these videos of rioting and looting, right? I've yet personally to see many videos of police breaking up looting. When you watch that Target video, ain't no cops there, right?
None.
I've seen more videos of protesters protecting businesses, telling y'all, hey, don't throw that brick. We're going to get blamed for it. Hey, white kid, put that brick down, right? Whenever you see videos of cops beating someone within an inch of their life with a baton, gassing them, it's never rioters. It's always protesters. And so I agree, protesting is one thing and rioting and looting is another. But the violence that we're watching the police execute on our citizens, I've not seen any versus against rioters. I've not seen any against looters. I'm only seeing video after video of a cop punching a girl in the face. Like,
where are the police?
What are we even watching here?
Where are the police when they're burning down these buildings? How they didn't get to that Target and they was in there for an hour and a half running through that motherfucker, and the police didn't show up? What's happening? How's
and
that
of course, you also have undercover cops.
They're burning shit down too. They're doing it.
That is what they did with Occupy Wall Street in 2009 as well. They had undercover cops go into Occupy Wall Street and start riots because that gave the police permission then to gas the crowd and clear the crowd. Because you can't gas a crowd that's not doing anything but being a crowd. You needed something to instigate the violence on the police end. So when I watch all of this rioting and looting, I think, half of it is people running insurance scams, burning down their own stores so they can get the insurance because the economy's bad. Your store was already closed because of COVID, and you were already going out of business in a couple months anyways. And some of it is also cops instigating this stuff for the purpose of this. But then, of course, there's also some poor people who are so desperate to be able to get their hands on something that they get in their hands on what they can get on. And again, it's not okay. It's not a good thing. But how can we not understand? How can we not understand that that's the response? I liken it to if you're in a boxing match that you don't want to be in because the other person is a professional boxer and they've got the ability to jab and spar and move, and you don't know how to fight, so you just keep getting punched in the face. How long is it going to take, since you don't have the skill set to defend yourself in an appropriate manner, that you try and gouge the guy's eyes out? That you try and, punch him in the balls, that you reach outside of the wing for a chair and hit him with a chair, because you've got to affirm your humanity and defend yourself and act out in some way. And we don't have a constructive way to let out this rage.
Go ahead. Keep talking. I have a cat.
When we're talking about the media and we're talking about the way that they program us, I think that is, everybody should look up Manufacturing Consent. It is a book written by Noam Chomsky in the late 80s. You can watch a 2.5-hour movie. I think it's free on YouTube. Manufacturing Consent. It talks about how the media is not a check on power. We act like the media is the fourth estate. It's supposed to be the thing that keeps power under control. But in fact, when you have corporate-owned media, you now have an incentive structure where the media is going to put out stories and cover news in a way that benefits the corporation that owns it. They're not going to allow, you think the Washington Post, it's owned by Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, is going to write negative stories about Amazon and how it treats its workers? Of course not. Like, of course not. That's not allowed. And when Bernie Sanders introduces into Congress the Stop Jeff Bezos Act, it was literally called the Stop Bezos Act. And in 2 weeks later, Amazon has to give $15 an hour to all of its workers. Guess what? When he announces that he's running for president, 16 negative stories in a 48-hour period in the Washington Post.
Damn.
Like, the media is not a check on power. It is a tool of power so that we are put, here's the parameters of what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. Bernie Sanders is a socialist that's going to destroy the country, and America's a capitalist country. America's not a capitalist country. Like, no country's a capitalist country. No country's a socialist country. Every country's a mix of socialism and capitalism. Our socialism in America is Medicare, Social Security, public school, fire department. When your house is on fire, nobody says, what's your income bracket to determine what type of police we send to you. No, it's a public good for everyone. That is socialism. And so if you allow the media to create narratives that make you think certain things are not possible, like getting Joe Biden tossed the hell out of this ticket, then you don't believe it's even on the realm of possibility, when in fact it's completely and utterly possible, but we're just not conditioned to think that that's a possibility. As for Donald Trump and this anonymous thing, dude, when 19 women accused him when he was running against Hillary Clinton of some form of sexual harassment or sexual assault, I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. One of the stories that rarely got talked about was that a woman, who is now an adult, obviously, filed a lawsuit in court saying that Donald Trump, when she was 16 years old, had raped her because she had been sex trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein at his mansion in New York City. And when I heard that story, I thought, that's ridiculous and over the top. Like, we're doing the whole demonizing of a person thing. And I'm like, and now that's going to give credence to people not believing any of these other 19 women who are immensely more credible than that crazy story. But then fast forward a year or two, come to find out Jeffrey Epstein, who I'd never heard of, is now famously one of the largest sex traffickers to the rich in the history of America. He is straight up a sex trafficker who trafficked underage girls to rich and powerful men, including a prince in England, and a bunch of politicians and powerful rich people here in the United States. And so now that we know that to be true, you put that in context, that original story of a girl saying, I was sex trafficked to Donald Trump. Now that's terrifying. And to know that the media also had this story on Jeffrey Epstein years ago and chose not to go forward with it because they were getting pressure from the royal family in England telling ABC News that if you run with the story, we will never give you another interview with a royal family member ever again. And they wanted pictures of the baby, of Prince Harry's baby that was coming. Like, that's crazy. And again, you put in context the way the media selectively chooses what they cover and what they don't cover. It's not based on objective journalism. It's based on what they want to cover. Take Christine Blasey Ford and Brett Kavanaugh. I'm against Brett Kavanaugh and all of his politics. I didn't want him on the Supreme Court, especially when that's a seat that was stolen because of Merrick Garland. You know, they got that extra stolen seat from Barack Obama. Christine Blasey Ford comes forward with a story from high school of her being at a house party and getting sexually assaulted by Brett Kavanaugh. To hear her tell the story, there is absolutely no reason to think this woman is making this up. I believe women, generally speaking, I think unless women have an incentive to make something up, and there's certainly in Christine Blasey Ford was no incentive to do that. She was a college professor who's going to ruin her life, and it did. You know, she's getting death threats left and right. But to put that in a fair context, this is an accusation, not of rape, not of penetrative anything, but of a guy getting physically aggressive and sexually intimidating a woman while drunk in high school. And there was no one that remembered it from the time. Now, she told her husband and she told her therapist, but look at the way the media ran with that story. The Democratic senator from California, Dianne Feinstein, outed her. They put her on to stand to testify in the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court trial. And I believe her, but I had reservations at the time. Is this fair? Is this fair when this man has not been accused of anything for the last 30 years to go back to his high school years and say drunkenly at a house party that no one remembers, he got rough and physical with a girl and now his career should be ended? I don't know if that's fair. I believe her, but I don't know if it's
fair.
They
did that to Bill Cosby?
No, Bill Cosby was 40 women over the course of decades, and he was not in high school, and like he was not like, this was a grown-ass man that was a serial rapist. Don't be that black person, Will. Don't be that black
I ain't defending Bill Cosby. I'm just saying they went back 30, 40 years.
And I'm sorry I'm going long, but let me juxtapose that against Tara Reid, the woman who has accused Joe Biden of sexually assaulting her. Joe Biden was not in high school. Joe Biden was not drunk. Joe Biden was a 50-something-year-old senator. She was a 20-something-year-old staffer. She was a manager. She had people working under her in his Senate office. And she was put in a position to be alone in a room with him by his secretary, intentionally go take this bag to Joe alone in an office, just like we've been talking about with Epstein, Weinstein, etc. And he shoved his hand inside of her. And she recounts the story, and she told 4 or 5 people at the time that it happened. Her mother even called into Larry King live. We have a recording of her mom calling into Larry King's show, talking about how her daughter was sexually harassed by a famous senator. And we've got all this corroborating evidence that this woman is clearly not making it up in 2020. She's not making the story up. She told people the story in 1990 something. So we've got way more evidence corroborating Tara Reade's story, but the media is not talking about it because we're only Me Tooing the Harvey Weinsteins, the Bill Cosbys, and the Donald Trumps of the world. But when it's one of ours, when it's someone that we cover, that we protect, then we're going to circle the wagons and we're going to act like this woman's not credible. And that is terrifying. That should scare everyone. The Me Too movement is officially dead. It's over. And Joe Biden killed it because the same people, Alyssa Milano, all these people that were Me Too, Me Too, Me Too, they all have to take that stuff back now because they don't believe women. Even when they have 4 other corroborating witnesses, they don't believe it. And the media, again, the real responsibility is for the media to give it the exact same hearing and fair treatment that they gave Christine Blasey Ford with Brett Kavanaugh. I think they gave Christine Blasey Ford way too much of a platform with very little corroborating evidence. And I think they're giving Tara Reade way less of a platform with far more corroborating evidence. And that is scary to me, that we can just pretend that Joe Biden is not credibly accused of rape, the same as we can pretend that he doesn't visibly have signs of dementia. Like, we just have to pretend. I won't pretend with you. I won't do it. You can pretend if you want to, but I won't pretend with you.
I definitely know all the signs that Joe Biden does indeed have dementia. It's clear as day. He is a rapist and a creep. And he is not a viable candidate for president at all.
Certainly not at this moment. This is not any other election. This is the Donald Trump election with the country on fire and 40% unemployment for poor people. What the fuck?
This will save the world.
Oh my God, the disdain.
That will save the world.
You know, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leadership, they act like the adults from a South Park episode. Like, they're just clowns. Like, just clowns.
I didn't know what to say when I saw that. I'm like, is this
Who
like...
told them that was a good idea?
Who was behind that? That's what I need to know. Who?
Like, do you not have any black people on your staff that are like, nah, girl, this ain't a good look.
That's not the move.
This ain't it.
That politics really ate it up. But I'm finna hit this real quick too, since I'm on it. Actor Billy Porter says black people are like white supremacists with LGBT, especially speaking highly on the trans beatings and black people disowning the gay men, all this shit. Do you think he went too far with saying that is as white supremacist, or is he right on the money? Henry.
I think when you are in an oppressive period, your behaviors can mirror another oppressor. It'd be lying to say that cisgender people in the black community are not oppressive to LGBTQ people. That is a lie. It's been thoroughly shown. It's been like I said before, the young lady Ayana Dior. Mm-hmm. That is a pure example of that. And because, like the same way Jim Crow was, there are no systems in every state or federal legislation that protects LGBTQ people. It is the whole reason why I left Atlanta, because there are no LGBTQ protections in the state of Georgia. None. So if you really think, I don't disagree with Billy's statement. I hate to say it, because like people with privilege are dangerous, period. Mm-hmm. As a cisgender man, I am an oppressor. I participate in an oppressive system. I, as a man, am an oppressor. I can sit here and say that these women are lying when only 3 to 5% of rape accusations are false. But because as a man, I have the privilege to say it and get away with it.
Right.
I do feel like that cisgender people are dangerous as fuck. I feel like men are dangerous as fuck. I don't feel like that we as cisgender people or as people with privilege have done the LGBT community very well. I don't think even like how most trans people feel, they don't feel that the T should even be in that because it's a different understanding of an identity. And I personally do not think that Billy Porter was wrong. I do feel like people, I think people are scared to look in the mirror. And that's what's really going on right now, that we all are being confronted with the mirror. And Black people in our community, we need to really check ourselves. There are a lot of things going on in our community that, like, you really expect a revolution and you want things to change, you have to look in the mirror. And you have to be accountable for your part in the failures of this nation as well. Especially when a lot of y'all are running around with your Judeo-Christian beliefs and part like you can't, like, you have to say it's similar. Like, they literally use the Bible as white people to justify slavery.
Right.
Well, we as Black people literally use the Bible to condone homophobia.
Oh.
So you can't sit here and say that we're any less than white supremacists when we are exhibiting the same behaviors. We are exhibiting the same thing as Black cisgendered people by not allowing trans people to work in jobs because their gender markers aren't proper or their ID says a different name. There's no, again, like I said before, there's no perspective and compassion. And that is ultimately the problem. And until Black people who have privilege identify that the system needs to be dismantled, it's going to be the same circle jerker fuckery over and over again. Because if you're not, if you're not white folks tearing down Black folks, you Black folks who are straight are tearing down queer folks who are cisgendered. So gay queer folks are being transphobic to trans people. And then like able-bodied trans people could be disrespectful to disabled trans people. It's a domino effect. If you think you're not a part of the domino, that's foolish.
Right.
You can't change another system without changing another system. It all has to go in succession. So if you think that like we're above reproach because we niggas, no, we're not above reproach. Because we're just a part of the problem as well. Because the thing that like is going to happen, let's say if we do have a Wakanda, there are going to be sects in that Wakanda that are going to hate LGBTQ people.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lie.
No prejudices.
Right. Like human beings cannot help themselves.
Right.
For shit. Versus doing the right thing. And like Ben, I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you. Unless we all are doing this together, nothing's going to change. And like I said, like the poor white movement, I never thought about it, but you make a very valid point. So it's like at the end of the day, unless we can bring everybody into this mishmash of fuckery and foolishness, nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really hope that people would do the right thing, but God, doing the right thing is so not fun. No one, you don't immediately win when you do the right thing because you're doing the right thing for everybody else.
I think the discomfort with the statement is that it sounds like a blanket statement of all Black people, right? But the reality is we do that to white people all the time. And I have to tell white people that. I'm like, when I talk about white people, I'm talking about white people as a whole. 60% of white people voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
So that doesn't mean that all 60% are completely and utterly racist, but it definitely means they were willing to tolerate a ridiculous level of racism to get their economic needs met, right? So they were willing to say, I ain't worried about this racism. I'm voting on this, right? And so when Billy Porter is talking about Black people and Black men and Black cisgender men, he's talking about the homophobic ones, the transphobic ones. Right. He's not talking about all Black people. And so we don't have to sit in that discomfort of saying Billy Porter's wrong. Of course, Billy Porter's right about the people he's talking about and the thing that Black community. People
don't realize is like it's the same way with law enforcement. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about a problem of a system. Mm-hmm. The system of cisgendered, privileged Black people are problematic as shit and dangerous. And not only is it just like people like, well, there's Black cops in the force, and that's cute and all, but you guys are complicit by not saying anything.
Right.
It's like me as a cisgendered person not defending a trans person, and that makes me complicit automatically. Mm-hmm. So it's just not the fact of like, oh, all Black people are terrible. There are a system of Black people that are a problem. There are a system of cops that are a problem. There are a system of white people that are a problem. And if you can't identify the system versus the individuals, we have another problem.
Like, I do think they're two very different things, though, in the sense that the criminal justice system is, in fact, a system. It is, it's prosecutors, it's police chiefs, it's judges, it's jury, it's wardens, it's police guards. It's a real system, right? When it comes to transphobia, that is literally just an issue of education and treat people better. There's no system that needs to be dismantled, no hierarchy of cisgendered men.
I disagree.
Torn down.
I disagree. I would say because of the church, which is a system in our country, that is a part of the manipulation of why we as this thing's gonna make a few people mad. Our ancestors weren't Christians, or for the most part, from polytheistic groups. We were mostly indigenous groups in Africa that were in the middle of like African monotheistic groups, either like tricking us or bartering us for different things of that nature.
Right.
So
but I feel like we don't need to go down this path. And but I think it's important because you're opening a can of worms, a hornet's nest that doesn't need to be open. Because the reality is, religion, the Bible, didn't teach you to punch a trans woman in the face. It got nothing to do with the Bible. But religion was the excuse. They use that as an excuse to say, oh, God doesn't like gays. But does the Bible tell you to enslave black people? No. That was the excuse. The problem was your own racism, your own your own lack of self-esteem that needed to create inwards so that you felt better about yourself. That's what the problem was, and religion became the excuse to justify it. So I feel like that religion needs to be dismantled to solve racism or homophobia. What we need to do is get to the root and to the education to say, stop making that excuse. Why do you really not like trans people? Why do you really not like gay people? Let's have that conversation, because it's got nothing to do with the Bible. The Bible ain't telling you to do shit. No, not at all. But I feel like religion is a system for Black Americans to make excuses to act foolish. And they've used it as a system of But again, if it's not that excuse, it's another excuse, right? If I'm looking for an excuse to act like an asshole, I'll come up with whatever excuse I need to come up with. It'll be a different excuse every day in the week. It's like a bad kid. You know, like, why are you stealing? You know, when you got money, you're not poor. Why are you stealing, rich white kid? You're stealing because you want to steal. So there's something deeper than that causes this type of homophobia. Like, to give a quick example, I'm Jamaican. That's my ancestry. Jamaicans are incredibly homophobic, like disastrously homophobic, especially in the island. And where does that come from? Are Jamaicans just more angry and more hate-filled and more inferior in some way, shape, or form? No, it's because of trauma that happened during slavery. So when they would bring Jamaicans as our slaves from Africa and stop in Jamaica, it was a breaking station. It was a place that you came and you took the warriors and you broke their spirits. I know everything about buck breaking. I know everything about buck breaking. So you're literally raping men, Black men, in front of their families, in front of their kids, to humiliate them. That creates a level of homophobia that's nothing to do with anybody's religion. That's like the root cause of it. So like, I feel like it's a mistake because religion is a double-edged sword. It's got pluses, it's got minuses. It gives a lot of hope to a lot of people, as well as it gives a lot of excuses for bad behavior. But the issue is ultimately you're accountable for your actions and behavior, not the Bible, not your interpretation of the Bible. Because if you talk to somebody, other pastor, that other pastor is telling you at a different church, don't you ever do something like that and call yourself a Christian. So the problem can't be the system if some pastors are telling people the right thing and some pastors are telling people the wrong thing. At the end of the day, people are making a choice to go and be a part of something that's homophobic. And they're making a choice to live that homophobia out in their lives every day. I wish there was a bunch of Black affirming police stations all over the country. There aren't. There are no Black affirming, like, it doesn't matter what city it is, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, the blackest cities with the most rich, wealthy Black people still dragging Black kids out of cars in front of Morehouse and pepper spraying them, right? So there is no version of LGBT affirming churches the way there is, or the way there are churches, the way there is with police. That is a real system that reinforces itself over and over again. So you don't think racism is not a choice? I think racism is absolutely a choice. I think it has nothing to do with your religious beliefs. No, but I think like it's involved to go to a church that has a pastor that spouts racist shit, and if you don't agree with that, you leave that church and go to a church with a pastor that doesn't spout racist shit. Like, people make choices and they self-select. So when you end up in a racist church, It's because you chose to be in a racist church. It's not because the church made you racist. Like, I don't believe that in any way, shape, or form. Because you've met Black people. You've met them. They're human, same as you. It's not as though you haven't had an overwhelming amount of evidence to show you people's humanity. You're choosing to ignore it. So all I'm saying is blame. I feel like in society, we talk about the symptoms and not the root cause. And the root cause of homophobia is not religion. That might be where it gets introduced. That might be where it gets reinforced. But if a pastor told you to kill puppies, would you do it? No. People would reject that.
Yes.
No. People would reject that.
No, I don't agree. I think religion is
it's cultish. It's
very dangerous. I think religion is very dangerous, especially when Black people are involved. I think religion is very manipulative. It's very dangerous. These motherfuckers would give their motherfucking last dollar to Creflo Dollar.
It is
right, but again, that's ignoring all of the positive churches that aren't doing that.
Is religion positive?
That's a bigger conversation. But let's be clear. Let's be clear about what I'm saying. Religion is a thing. It's not. It doesn't have a persuasion. It's an animate thing. The pastor comes in and says, "I'm going to interpret this Bible the way I see fit," and then now his human man beliefs get disseminated to his flock that is connecting their spiritual umbilical cord to someone whose compass is pointing off. And so you go to a different church down the street and they're preaching a completely different message of love. I've worked in a faith-based community organization, the one that helped pass the restoration of felons' rights here in Florida. And I got to work with Muslim imams. I got to work with Jewish rabbis. I got to work with Catholic priests and nuns. I got to work with Seventh-day Adventist pastors. And I went there at a time where my faith couldn't have been lower, where my opinion of religion couldn't have been lower. Like, all of this is just the fairy tales y'all tell yourself to feel better at night, right? And what I was able to learn by being around this myriad of different types of religious leaders is that there were some religious leaders that were bad men. Their compasses just didn't point north. And when you went to them asking for help in a fight to restore the rights of Black felons in Florida, they wasn't hearing it because it wasn't who they were. And then you come to some other white guy, some Jesuit Catholic priest that you walk in the room thinking, this white man ain't never gonna be for me. This dude's willing to do whatever it takes to have your back more than some of the Black pastors from Paramore. Like, it's people either preach judgment or they preach love. And if you have a real relationship with God and the Creator, God is love, the enemy is judgment. The enemy is saying, I'm better than you. And that is where racism comes from. That's where homophobia comes from. And I think all of these are tools of the enemy to divide us so that we can never come together and be what we need to be. But there are plenty of pastors out there preaching love that we can all learn from. And whether I ascribe to their religious beliefs, all of them or not, there are men of faith that are preaching love. And those men should be lifted up.
Yes, but let me say this on religion, because I grew up in church, raised in church, parents are preachers. But let me say this, religion is dangerous. But you did say people go to a church, it's the pastor that's speaking this rhetoric and blah, blah. If you don't like what he's saying,
it ain't the Bible.
Listen now, you said they can get up and leave. This is the problem, because listen, when you grow into church and you're drawn in, you're sheep, a new believer. You don't know, especially if you don't know any better. You never grew up in church. You never knew. And if you're getting under a pastor, even if he's racist, even if if a pastor not just going to sit up here, most of them now are not going to say, I hate niggers. I hate this. I hate the gays. They're going to use the scripture to say what they're saying in a way to form it in your mind that if you're that, or if you deal with that, you're going to hell. And you better come clean now. You better, that's the danger part of it, because you get the sheep. That's what the Bible calls us. We're sheep and we don't know no better. Blah. And so you get the shepherd leading us into whatever way, and you're going to follow that. And you have to be broken out of that. That's another mental breaking you have to go through, and therapy and revelation for yourself. So I agree on both ends. There are good people that are really living the truth of love and not judging. There are people that's really out there about that life. But I pray that people find them and not run up.
I want to affirm what you're saying, because what you're saying is 100% correct. It is absolutely dangerous. Anytime you're going to subjugate your will to a group, it's dangerous, because you're going to get involved in what's called tribalism, where you start to take on all of the social pressures of whatever group that you join. But how is that different than the Democratic Party and the Republican Party? We got a whole bunch of people who are saying, I don't care what the other side says. I'm for this guy no matter what. He can kill somebody in the street and I'm with it. And you got other people saying blue no matter who. I don't care if it's Michael Bloomberg, who literally instituted Jim Crow level laws when he was the mayor of New York. I'm voting for that Jim Crow. Like, so you've got the same mentality that's dangerous in political parties. In you're gonna hear any Washington Redskins fan say that the name of their football team is racist?
Hell no, not.
Right.
Jesus Christ,
they're tribalistic. It's the same thing. So all I'm saying is that religion is a tribe, and a Baptist is a tribe, Seventh-day Adventist is a tribe, Catholic is a tribe, and it's the same behaviors sociologically as any other tribe. And to like blanket say it's bad, no, that's not fair. Either the tribe is good or the tribe is bad, but the entire thing, the religion, it's an inanimate object.
I agree. I agree with your analysis there. I loved it. I love that topic.
So again, I want to say you're right. Henry, you're right. Will, you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong.
I agree with all of it, but I just wanted to break it down for other people. Like, you know, it's very vast. That's why you said that's a can of worms that could go very deep into other things. But the last thing that I do want to mention is I'm surprised we're getting all these hidden in. American culture is Black culture. And the reason why I brought this up, because all these corporations are now coming out with their support. But I wanted to read this from Justin Bieber. He said, I'm inspired by Black culture. I have benefited off of Black culture. My style, how I sing, dance, perform, and my fashion have all been influenced and inspired by Black culture. I am committed to using my platform from this day forward to learn, to speak up about racial injustice and systemic oppression, and to identify ways to be a part of much needed change. I am shocked and pretty relieved of his statement, which is everything he said was absolutely the truth. And pretty much all of American culture is Black culture, besides the racism part, but even that is technically Black culture because it's against us. So I mean, especially the arts, the music, the dance, the athleticism, all of that is Black culture. Do you feel like but we get the least amount of like record negotiation deals, good distributing, and all of these things? We get the shit in of all of that. Do you have anything to speak about American culture and Black culture being equivalent to each other and one and the same? Anybody?
I think that the key part is that America's not a monolith any more than Black people are a monolith. Oh. And Black people are the trendsetters for American culture. They're the one. And again, you can even go further than that and say Black gay men set the trends within the Black community, which sets the trends for the country. And that's, to me, that's an objective statement. Like, it might sound like I'm biased. It might, as a bisexual person, I'm being biased. But no, again, that's what we see. Like, we see these influences trickling down all the way throughout. And of course, the difference in how, we get the short end of the stick is because of the distribution of power. And often it's because all of the systems, every lever of power is controlled by a white man at the end. Every record label is owned by a white man until he lets, somebody open up a smaller label under them. Now you can have your own little fiefdom under my thing, but I'm taking a big cut of the pie. But at the same time, I don't think we do a good job of leveraging our power. I don't think we do a great job of recognizing that they can't do some of this without us. And if we're willing to stand up and say, we're not giving it to you for free, then you're able to change incentive structures. But at the end of the day, when I see Justin Bieber write that, I think it's sad that he has to, in the sense that he's made $1 billion mimicking Black people. That's sad. But at the same time, Usher's made some money off of that too, right?
Yeah, he's Usher's little protege, isn't he?
But to me, that's the very least you could ask of him, and also probably the best we can hope from people. You know, like when Roger Goodell gave in within 24 hours to the demands of that video of those NFL superstars who said, we demand that the NFL affirm that Black Lives Matter. We demand that they apologize for stopping us from being able to protest. The NFL had dug in their heels on this for years. How Black people feel about it be damned. And within 24 hours, Roger Goodell is recording exactly the hostage video that they asked of him. And
the Al Qaeda video.
Right. You can say whether it's sincere or not, but I think the least we could expect of him was to actually do what they asked. But probably also the most you can expect of him is a half-hearted version of an apology. You know, they ain't giving Kaepernick a job, right?
That's what I was just going to mention.
What they did. You know, so I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about what the expectation is of white America in moments like this. Like, because
that's a good question. What is the expectation?
Same as we don't have good prescriptions for us. What's the actual helpful thing for Black people to be doing right now? Like, does your white guilt do anything to help us? You know what would be great? Just stop lecturing me about race. Like, if you could just personally, white America, stop telling me about the climate of racism under Donald Trump, as though I haven't lived it my entire life. Like, that would go a long way towards making my life easier.
Henry, anything to say about American culture?
I think, like Ben said about us being trendsetters, we're definitely trendsetters, but we also have set all the standards. There's a part of Black culture where, like even right now, without Black LGBTQ people, y'all all wouldn't be on TV saying shade, and you got straight men saying shade, like right. That's shady. Like I remember, like because I'm 40, I'm not like I didn't grow up in the era of LGBT culture where the kids are like coming out earlier and becoming much more well adjusted than I was allowed to be well adjusted. So like being gay growing up it was a protected subculture. We protected our culture. We didn't share it. We didn't invite many people into our spaces. When we were gay, it was just us. Mm-hmm. Period. Now, for you to be in our spaces, you got to be really superb and really like dope to be in our spaces. But now it's become like a fucking free for all. You can't go to a damn drag brunch with it being more women in the room, more cis women in the room.
Yeah,
than us.
I agree with that.
So it's like our community. The thing that happens with America is that they try to commodify everything right. Is the market. So Black people are usually at the lead of it: fashion, language, politics. While we may not be in the seats, we are somehow involved in the narrative to some weird degree, whether it's negative or positive. Mm-hmm. So it's like for people not to acknowledge that Black culture, like we are an infection on this world. Like you can't, like you got today in Japan, tanning and darkening and wearing braids to represent hip hop. And I know because like my ex-partner is from Clarendon, Jamaica, and
that's where my family's from.
Right. So he's an immigrant, naturalized now. But he talks about how like Jamaican reggae culture is just like this lit thing in Jamaica. Like I mean, in Japan, Japan has a really huge reggae culture compared to other places outside of the Caribbean islands.
Wow.
So it's just like they love to be us. They love to appear like us, and to say that, and I agree with Ben. We're not a monolith. We are an array of different understandings, different truths, different people. But they always pick parts of us to be us. Like you got that shit called a fucking Jufro, which came from the Afro.
Afro.
Like
exactly. You're
like
right.
They want to be us so bad. It's weird, and I think that like if you can't acknowledge what we've done as far as inventions, technology, the light bulb, traffic stops, everything we've done, it's just bullshit. It's just bullshit. Like every part of like even like hip hop comes from the United States, which is in Europe, and everybody's doing hip hop with different things. Now, while the beat and the melodies may be from African culture and African ancestry, we've evolved it in the United States to something else. Reggae is another thing, like Caribbean music. The beats, the drums, all that stuff, those things are a part of other cultures. Like everybody wants a piece of this pie. we run out of slices. We're not asking for any payment for our slices.
Woo!
But I feel like sometimes with Black culture, we sometimes give it away too freely sometimes.
Right.
Like, why are we always the choreographers for these Justin Biebers, these Justin Timberlakes who I despise what he did to my Janet Jackson?
That is a thing.
I will always hate Justin because of that.
That is a thing.
But it's like the brass tacks on Blackness is our detriment, but the brass tacks of Blackness on white people is their success. And that shit unnerves me. Like
the same behavior that's ghetto and unlikable amongst us is cool and fashionable when another culture
right, like
they're able to monetize it because now it's cool and fashionable.
Like Miley Cyrus and Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera definitely had niggerish periods. They were allowed to be niggerish.
Yes, they did.
But as soon as Beyonce 10 albums in does a Formation video, it becomes a like, oh my God, she's Black.
Like it's news to the world.
I mean, like, while Saturday Night Live is not my favorite show, but
that SNL skit is amazing.
Yeah, but that Bajancy skip, the thing when they did the Formation thing, and like Black people, white people are like jokingly saying to Black people, like, Beyonce's Black. Like, oh my God, you're Black too. Like, literally, like, the wool came off, and we're all like looking around as Black people, like, Beyonce's been Black.
Right.
And
I think my favorite part of that skit, the day Beyonce turned Black on SNL, was when the white woman's on the phone. She's like, it feels like it's not for us. And everything's always for us.
Exactly. They need it. It's for them. We're not a part of it.
Right. And it was really weird. And I think that people don't realize how much they can modify our culture and not acknowledge us. And I think that Black people need to stop being nice about it and say that, no, that's us. While I will say, and I didn't say this earlier, Twitter has become that check and balance in American society that we truly need. When I want my media and the truth, I'll get the Twitter, because Twitter is not so far left and so far right. It's just the gray that no one ever wants to acknowledge or talk about. Regardless if it's right or wrong, or I agree or disagree, there is the gray that I like. I may not necessarily agree with what this person is saying, but that bit in that little piece, I hear that and I receive it. But the media at large doesn't give us the gray. They only want to give us the left or the right, period. I like to see what's in the gray sometimes.
Me too.
When you eat a sandwich, are you eating the bread or eating for the meat? So it's like, when it comes down to Black culture, you see a lot of things, especially on Twitter. Like today, I didn't know Blue Magic was owned by a white person. I was not.
I've seen a lot of these companies, Cantu, owned by a
but that's the thing, is like they commodifying so far and so deep into Black culture. Every Negro had Blue Magic in their house.
Everybody.
If you lived in the 80s,
in my house,
right? You lived in the 80s and 90s, you had Blue Magic in your house. So it's like, when I heard it, was like, yo, really? So it's like, I think people need to I think Black culture is
the real problem is when you find out that company was donating to Trump, right?
But that's the real piece, Ben. We wouldn't hear that on MSNBC. We wouldn't hear that on CNN. It's like they only give us information that benefits their narrative. And that's the dangerous part.
By the way, I wanted to just make a shout out for whoever watched this, because it really matters what media you take in.
Right.
If you want to follow politics and you love politics, the show that I recommend above all others is The Hill Rising with Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. It's only on YouTube. She's a progressive, like a Bernie Sanders leftist, but very much for working class people on the liberal side, criticizing Joe Biden and the Democrats all the time. And Sagar and Jetty used to work for Tucker Carlson. He's a conservative, a Republican, but 100% against the corporation screwing over that poor white guy in West Virginia, right? And so together, they're giving you both sides of the narrative, but it is not the corporate narrative. It is 100% the people, conservative people's, working people's perspective, and liberal, progressive, working class people's perspective. So look it up, Crystal Ball, Sagar and Jetty, The Hill Rising. It's a 15-minute clips every morning, multiple of them. It's fantastic. They were just on Joe Rogan's podcast for 3 hours. Flew by. And
that's the real piece I think people don't realize is that places like YouTube, podcasts, are better places for information because it's not built around a corporation saying, hey, here's your check, Anderson Cooper.
Right.
Make it look good, niece.
Exactly.
Oh.
That's Shuri.
Shuri.
After Black Panther's little sister.
I love it. But it's not like that. Like there's no vested interest to make sure that they are giving us what we need to hear.
Right.
So like when you are doing shows like this, whether you agree with any of us or disagree with anything that we've all said, it is our unfiltered opinions, not based off of what a corporation is feeding Ben or Will or Henry.
Right.
So at the end
that
of the
matters.
day,
That's so
right.
matters. If I'm getting paid by someone to tell you this, you got to question it. Because now I have to filter that through whoever's paying me this money.
Right. And it's like when you work for me, I'm a bartender. I've been a bartender for 21 years. I have to support my brand regardless if I agree with some things that go on because I want that check. Right. I have to play the game. I don't work for myself. And so when you are like, my bar is the best bar in the city because I work at this bar. That's how the media is. Now, Applebee's may be great too, and motherfucking TGI Fridays may be great, but this bar working is the only bar you need to be at. This is the only bar you need to work
or
at.
Or they all might be trashing y'all, all lying for a check.
Right. And that's the problem. You don't know who's really telling the truth and why if they want to give you the information of the truth. So it's largely that I just feel like sometimes Black people, minorities need to get the information from other sources. I don't recommend reading Washington Post, New York Times, all those shits all the time. Look at it like some blogs have really good information, whether you agree with it or not. It's like this lady on YouTube, her show's called The Financial Diet, and she talks about wealth, maintaining it. She brings on women, Black people. She brings on an array of people. Mm-hmm. And she's not Susie Orman pumping up capitalism and telling people that you can't have that boat and you can't have it because like you don't have the wealth. You don't have the white bottom line. But this girl, this woman is sitting on YouTube and saying, sometimes you need to just treat yourself. You need that stuff.
You do.
Because the idea that at $40,000 a year, you go stack your coins into a comfortable retirement.
Right. Right. And she says a lot of unfiltered advice. Like she'll say, like people right now are worried about the stock market. She was like, fuck the stock market. It's crashed. It's done. Leave your shit where it is till it recovers. Or if you want to buy in, this is the time. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather hear someone who doesn't have any like sponsorships or any guarantee. Like she has a sponsorship with with TurboTax. She just plugs them all the time. But TurboTax is not telling her to say this and X, Y, and Z about these specific things around wealth. And I think that Black people, queer people, whoever you are as a minority, you need to get more sources of your information. If you're sitting around literally just accepting information from only the mass media, I worry about you.
It's so much about who you choose to trust.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, I know Rachel Maddow from when she was on Air America with Al Franken, the senator that had to step down. And she was a liberal firebrand. And so that's my impression of her. She built this credibility with me over the course of years. And then she goes on to MSNBC. She still has that same credibility now that she's getting this check. And then I look back at the last 2 years of her pumping Russiagate about Donald Trump. And it was complete nonsense. It was all lies. It was just a giant conspiracy theory to demonize Donald Trump. And again, Donald Trump's trash, but he's not a Russian puppet of Vladimir Putin. And no Democrat actually believed that. Because if a Democrat believed he was a puppet of Vladimir Putin, they wouldn't have given him a $900 billion military budget to bomb whoever the hell he wanted.
Right.
It was on its face a lie. And Rachel Maddow pushed it for 2 years, but she makes $15 million a year now.
Right.
So she's got to push what they tell her to push. And yet, if you have her as a trusted source, just like you signing up for a pastor whose compass doesn't point north, you are getting led astray.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to, who we trust. And so Fox News viewers are not dumb, idiot rednecks. They're just people who chose a conservative media because that caters to them and their needs and their worldview. And then they trust that media, and that media lies and manipulates them. Same as old Black people in South Carolina watching MSNBC. They're not dumb, ignorant Black people that just don't know any better. It's that who they choose to trust because they have jobs and they have kids to feed and they don't have the hours a day that I put into sitting down watching stupid YouTube videos for 4 hours a night. Like, they're just trying to live their life. And when they turn on their trusted sources are lying to them.
Right.
Because there are no trusted sources in the mainstream media. The New York Times has never been against any war ever. Ever. They were for Vietnam. They were for Iraq. They cheerlead for war. And they bring on former CIA agents to come and give you propaganda live on air. It's crazy.
This is America.
Right. And it's Orwellian. It is 1984. Like, that's literally what we're watching. And I think Cornel West, who I know was rude to you at a party, and I apologize on his behalf, but he said recently on CNN, what we're watching is America as a failed social experiment. And I sat there and I shuddered because I was like, Cornel, they're not going to let you back on CNN. You can't keep telling these people the truth. Van Jones said racism is like a virus in white people's brain that can be activated on the flip of a dime if they feel threatened. She was a Hillary Clinton supporter in that park in New York, but was able to weaponize her whiteness like she was trained by the KKK. Like,
she did.
Man, they gonna let you back on CNN if you keep saying this stuff, But I'm happy that in this moment we're having at least some leaking of truth. We're having a space created for Black people and smart Black people who are willing to risk it all. And go on TV and say the thing that's gonna make white people uncomfortable. And that gives me some hope, because the only way forward is to have an honest, truthful accounting where we stop talking about the excuses like, oh, religion made me be homophobic. No, it didn't. Didn't. Let's have a conversation about you.
Right. And that's really the real piece, is accountability, and no one wants to be accountable right now. Right. Everybody's like, he did it.
The buck stops somewhere right there.
Like, but what are you doing right now? I'm not asking you what he did. What are you doing?
Joe, your name is at the bottom of the bill. Like, you literally wrote the bill.
Your John Hancock is on here, Joe Biden. Like, what do you want us to do?
He said he doesn't remember that. His dementia has set in, and it is.
Ain't that the perfect defense?
His dementia has set in.
That's the best joke. When Joe Biden goes out there and says this week, that cops should shoot unarmed people in the leg, not in the heart. You only have two options in this case. You have the option that he means it. He literally means that cops should be shooting unarmed people in the leg, or he's literally mentally not up for this challenge. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's mentally just not up for it.
And I think it'd be so different if, like, someone like Simone Sanders, who works for him, would check him realistically. Like, Simone, come on, sis.
Good luck.
Like, Simone Sanders gets on my fucking nerves.
She's cashing the checks.
But it comes because she's getting billed. She's getting billed by Joe. She's probably getting paid very well to support his foolishness and do Black girl damage control for fucking Biden. That shit is weird to me. Like, I look at Simone Sanders like, girl, y'all want to talk about coons?
Again,
but you can't
don't
say
use
that.
such words towards a Black woman ever. But I have to ask and pose the very fair but cruel but tough question. What's the difference between Simone Sanders and what she does and what Candace Owen does to another audience? What is the difference? You're giving the Black credibility to a narrative that is not true.
Right.
And what I will give credit to Candace Owens, at least she's conning white people. Simone is conning us.
Right.
She's conning her own people.
Right.
And that's why I have a different level of anger. And maybe it's because I grew up in a biracial family and I've been dealing with racism my entire life. I never had that 6 to 8 years of just being a Black kid that's protected. No, I had to deal with my family that didn't love me, right? So I'm not triggered by a white person that's racist. It doesn't faze me. It doesn't faze me. I care about policy. I care about systems. I care about, you can be racist, but will you promote me in your company?
Right.
I'd rather know that you're racist, and that if I make enough money and I'm the number one person on the team, even though you're racist, you're going to give me fair treatment, right? And you're gonna, what we know about Donald Trump is if you kiss Donald Trump's ass, it don't matter if you Kanye.
You're eating out of his ass.
If Barack Obama endorsed Donald Trump tomorrow for president,
he'll love him.
Cabinet member.
You hear me?
Right. It wouldn't even matter. What we know is that this racist man responds to incentives. And the con that he's running it on rural Alabamans. The con that Joe Biden is running, he's running it on my grandma And that bothers me more.
You're right.
It's just like I don't know how old y'all are, but it's kind of like Daphne Coleman's character on 9 to 5. As long as you was kissing Mr. Hart's ass, like Roz was, you can do anything in that office.
Yeah.
Everything. If you give him a little bit of pussy, like you try to get out of Dora Lee, out of Dolly Parton's character, Dora Lee got away with her, and it was always perceived that Dora Lee was in league with him because she worked so close with him. And it made her an enemy. And I think Simone is playing Dora Lee right now and doesn't realize it. Well, she probably does realize it, unlike Dora Lee didn't realize it. And I think there's a part where, like you said, it's just like, at least Candace is getting these white folks money and their alliance, while Simone is basically selling us up the river sometimes.
Simone Sanders deleted her Me Too, I Believe Women tweets. Think about how compromised your integrity is.
Oh, she has none.
Right.
She has none.
And so again, and again, I don't mean to pick on Simone Sanders because she's just a black woman getting a check, but we have no problem trashing Candace Owens. But again, Candace Owens is lying to them.
Right.
Simone is lying to us.
Right.
And that is a different level of betrayal for me.
Right. And that's fair. And that's completely fair. But I think no one wants to have that conversation.
Nobody wants to have that talk. Nobody wants to have that talk. And that's why, again, you can't, when they had the Germany and the Nazis thing, it's the truth and healing panel, same in South Africa. You can't have healing without truth. If we don't have the truth of slavery, if we're lying about what happened in the Civil War and what it was fought over, we can't heal as a nation. The Democratic Party can't heal its problems right now if no one will admit that they're selling out to the exact same donors as the Republicans.
Exactly.
If Bernie Sanders is going to go up there and say, my friend Joe Biden is a good guy that can beat Donald Trump, well, then what the fuck should we vote for you for? What are you doing up here? Are you planning to win? Like, are you running a real campaign, or are you just taking the energy that was from Occupy Wall Street or would go to a third party? You're absorbing that energy and funneling it into the Democratic establishment. Because in the end, you're always going to tell us to vote for Hillary or vote for Joe. And again, I don't claim to know people's intentions. That's not my job. I don't know people's heart. But I know the actions are not helping the people that believe in what he believes. It's not helping it move forward by telling everyone to just go vote for Joe. You could have done that at the end, but you should have held out and leveraged your power, leverage your constituency to get clear concessions, not some damn committees that we may be going to talk about and we can't even get Nina Turner on one of them. Get out of here. Get out of my life.
And you're right, Bernie did give in the towel too quick. COVID shook him up. It shook everything up when.
Here's the problem with Bernie. Bernie is afraid, not of the corporations, not of the bribery. He wants to be in the club. And he's afraid of being treated the way the Democrats treat Ralph Nader, who we blame for George Bush becoming president when he ran and took 4 or 5% of the vote and Al Gore lost by 20, something votes. We blame Ralph Nader, and Ralph Nader, who was right about everything he was saying in his campaign, is still persona non grata. He can't go to polite society and not be spent. Now, George Bush, the guy who lied us into wars and committed torture, can go to the Cowboys game and sit next to Ellen. But Ralph Nader is still being punished for standing up to the Democratic establishment because the Democratic Party is far more authoritarian and draconian with how they treat people. Nancy Pelosi is not giving the squad the time of day, where the Freedom Caucus had leverage over John Boehner because he allowed it. Because he said, you're a part of my constituency that's powerful and deserves a voice. So they had a veto power. He didn't have to go with that, but he chose to. The Democratic Party doesn't act very democratically in the way they handle dissent. We have diversity of skin color. We have diversity of gender. We will even find a gay mayor from South Bend, Indiana, who will talk and act exactly like the 77-year-old mass incarceration architect. Like, we'll give you a young guy if you want. We'll give you a millennial, but he's going to say and behave exactly like Joe Biden.
And we don't want.
So what you have is diversity in vision, optics of diversity. You don't have diversity of thought in our party. And we have to fix that. And we can't keep supporting the corruption. That's on us. You get the government that you deserve. And whether it's Donald Trump getting reelected and making the country worse, or Joe Biden getting elected and making the country worse, both of these guys are toxic men that will destroy whatever party they're in charge of. Both of them.
Indeed.
And I will always vote for Donald Trump to destroy the Republicans' character, to destroy what it means to be a Republican, than I would ever vote and co-sign on Joe Biden destroying what it means to be a Democrat.
Ooh.
I won't do it.
There it is.
Not for me.
And that's that on that, y'all. Period. So we've come to the conclusion of this show because y'all have ate it up. I'm literally here just done. Done. Thank y'all so much. I'm going to give each of you the screen to say everyone where to follow you, what are you doing, anything that you want people to know. So we're going to give Ben, you're up first, buddy, and it's on you.
Leave me alone. This is all I can take. I can't argue with no more people on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Yeah, that's they know. I'm good. I'll let you know when I sign up, because I'm probably going to go and start doing some work with the organization here between now and November. And I'll come back on and we'll talk about what we're working on then. Sound good?
I love it. You said leave you alone.
I'm tired. I'm tired this week.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Henry, of course. You see the name Just Sex Henry right there. Find me Twitter, Instagram. I'm also working. I'm actually currently a sex columnist for Soul.LGBT. You can just look that in. I'm also having a podcast coming up soon called Every Inch Matters via Soul LGBT, which is a Black LGBT publication. So that's just me. But if you follow me on Twitter, watch your mouth. Don't get too crazy because I have no filter.
And listen, he does not. I want to let you know before you go over there, y'all. Be prepared. But again, thank everybody for watching. Thank y'all for doing this. This has been very informative and everything. So, and we gonna